Good afternoon, and welcome to the City of Muskegon Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, October 10th, 2024. We'll begin the meeting with the roll call, please.
Commissioners Johnson.
Here.
Gawron.
Here.
Leroy.
Here.
Seifert.
Here.
Keener.
Here.
Mazade.
Here.
Montgomery Keys. Blake. Here. And Simmons.
Here.
Okay, we'll begin the meeting with the approval of the minutes from the special meeting of September 26, 2024. And we have a correction, a little housekeeping that we need to do. If you look at the motion, or the actual amended motion with respect to the short-term rental, and I'm probably going to ask the mayor to help me with this. There was a change with respect to the Lakeside bid and the DDA with respect to the caps. And what was supposed to be included was that those two districts would not be subject to the cap, but they would be subject to the ordinance.
Yes.
So we need to, and the motion does not reflect that. So I would ask for a motion on the minutes of September 26 to be approved subject to the amendment that was offered.
So moved.
Second.
So a motion and support to approve the minutes of the meeting of September 26, 2024 as amended. Any discussion on that?
Just to confirm, that is to reflect this here,
Okay.
right? When you say as amended, this is
All right.
inclusive of the correction?
Do you want to read it?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
It just
let's-
says with regard to section 1C of the short-term rental ordinance, exemptions, properties located within the Downtown Development Authority, Lakeside Business Improvement District, and Lakeside Corridor Improvement Authority boundaries are exempt from the short-term rental caps mentioned in 1B of this ordinance. There are no maximum number of short-term rentals allowed within these areas. So the ordinance still applies to all of those properties aside from the cap.
Okay. Everybody clear on that?
Yes.
Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And then there's another housekeeping item that we need. I think it's in front of you with respect to the minutes of the meeting of August. There is a change that needs to be made, and maybe Sarah or Mike can help us with what that is.
Yeah, so we noticed in the minutes, the motion had just read what the case was, but there's actually some change in the motion was to, instead of approving 4 residential and 1 commercial, to allow any mixture of residential or commercial as long as it meets the minimum building sizes, the unit sizes, because we know that their plans weren't as concrete yet.
Everybody clear on what that is? So I would take a motion to approve and to correct and approve the minutes of the August 15th, 2024 meeting.
So moved.
So a motion
Second.
and a support to approve and correct the minutes for that meeting. Any discussion on that matter? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. That leads us into the public hearings, and for the benefit of the audience, I'll let you know how we handle those public meetings. The subject matter is introduced by the city staff, and then the planning commission has an opportunity to ask questions of the city staff. After that, the petitioner, whoever that might be, or applicant, can come forward and provide any information they have, and then the planning commission will again ask any questions of that person or those persons, and then after that occurs, then we'll open up to the public, both in person and in the viewing audience, to ask any question or make comments, and then the public hearing will be closed, and the public and the planning commission will take action on the subject matter. With that, let's move into the first public hearing.
This is case 2024-25, a request to vacate the remaining portion of the alley between 2nd and 3rd Street, north of Webster and south of Clay Avenue by West Haven 280 LLC. This is the location of the former corner church building. There's new owners, and they have some mixed use going on in there. They would like to vacate the alley, but they don't have any intentions of building over it. They do have some ideas about potentially improving it into a walkway, possibly to the new addition to the art museum. When you vacate an alley, all it's doing is relinquishing the city's rights to the alley, so it actually becomes part ownership of everybody in the block until anything was replatted. Until anything was replatted, you'd never be able to build on it. We also have some infrastructure in the alley, so any approval would have to state that we would remain access to that, and that's pretty standard for our alley vacations. And I believe the applicant is here to share a little bit more about their ideas.
Anything else for us? Any questions for Mike? Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Would you state your name for the record, please, and tell us what you'd like to do?
Hi, I'm Mike Bernhardt, and bought the corner property this summer. As we all realize, there's been some changes to that block in the recent years. Arguably, most of them are positive. Some of our plans, and in fact, I had a lunch day with a member of the Museum of Art today, and the picture that's shown up there is a little bit dated, since the buildings across from the museum are now gone, and the museum plans to put a sculpture park in that area. They have purchased the parking lot adjacent to the corner, and that is primarily where their staff will be parking. And the plan for the sculpture park is to have a pedestrian walkway going through it, so it connects their staff parking lot with the museum across the street. So there's going to be a lot more pedestrian traffic cutting across that than there has been in the past. Our plans for the corner include a pedestrian plaza where our small strip of parking is right directly behind the corner. That's going to add more pedestrian traffic. The existing parking lots have a lot of access along Muskegon and Webster Avenue, and it's suggested that having cross traffic coming through a heavily pedestrian trafficked area is not the best solution. So we're suggesting that be vacated, so that between the library and the corner, we can make better use of that and somewhat restrict the vehicular traffic along that route.
Any questions from the planning commission?
Has there been any discussion amongst yourselves or your neighbors about how you would manage resurfacing that space should it need it in the future?
No. It's a concrete alley right now, and it's in pretty good shape. We're going to the two lots that you're seeing in that photo have just been resurfaced and restriped. Behind the corner, it's about a 25-foot wide section. That's asphalt. That's going to be converted over to concrete, as well as a plaza for pedestrian traffic only. So, but no discussion so far with the library about anything that might have to be done to that alley surface in the future. I was expecting someone from the library to be here as well. I will just comment that their space is severely restricted, and they're actually having trouble with where they put their garbage cans. They have a storage shed that's on somebody else's property now, so they would appear to really appreciate a little extra room than what they currently have now behind. I guess it's really to the side of the Torrent house.
Are you suggesting that they would put their trash in that space, or that they do that now?
Right now, their trash is in our space. So there needs to be a space for a trash can. Separately, we are discussing a central refuse island. If you're familiar with that picture, there are some utility transformer boxes in the middle of that parking lot. So that's on the museum property right now. And what we're talking about with the Methodist Church, the library, the museum, and ourselves is a centralized refuse island that would contain all of these refuse bins, beautify the area, and keep from everybody having their own bins strewn around the block. That is not obviously something that's incorporated here, but it's
Right.
just for future reference.
So is the intention for this to have no vehicular access in the future? Or
That
simply
would,
a shared
that would be
space?
my preference. I wouldn't control it, so I can't say what the library would do. My presumption is that the library would try and not have it as a throughway for vehicular traffic on their side. So it's not easy to see, but on that corner right now, there's a utility shed, there's a telephone pole, and there are two trash bins. That right at that intersection is difficult to see as pedestrians are crossing, and so that's part of the problem. Is that we're trying to use that area for too many things, and it doesn't seem like vehicular traffic is really the best idea anymore.
You good? Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
This is the time for the public hearing. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to address this issue, please raise your hand. We'll recognize you, and please come forward to the podium and state your name for the record. So if there isn't anybody here, we'll go to the viewing audience, and if you'd like to address this issue with the Planning Commission, please call 231-724-6721 and state your name for the record, and we'll allow you 3 minutes for comment. So Sarah, how are we doing?
No calls.
No calls?
Oh, wait. We do have one.
Okay.
That's the mic. So. Yeah,
It's right here.
Good. Welcome to the City of Muskegon Planning Commission. Please state your name for the record and make your comments, please.
Welcome to the city.
Well, my name is Vivian Stokes, and I live in the city of Muskegon. And the alley that he talks about, isn't that a public alley for everybody, not just for those businesses?
It is currently a public alley. The proposal would be to vacate the alley, and then the ownership would go to the current property owners on either side of that alley.
So it's not up to the residents to vote on that?
That's what the public hearing is for. The process is that we're having a public hearing before the Planning Commission for the request of vacating the public alley, and then after the public hearing and a recommendation by the City Planning Commission, the matter will go to the City Commission for consideration.
Okay. All right, thanks.
You're welcome. Anybody else, Sarah? Then I'll consider a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Have a motion and support to close the public hearing. Any discussion on the matter? All's in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Now we'll take a motion on the subject matter. City Manager.
I move that the request to vacate the remaining portion of the alley between 2nd and 3rd Street, north of Muskegon Avenue and south of Webster Avenue, be recommended for approval to the City Commission with the following condition. The city retains a utility easement with the same boundaries as the alley being vacated. And I just want to note for staff's purposes that I tweaked the motion because the street names were backwards. So,
Support.
Have a motion and support to approve the request to vacate the alley. Any discussion?
I just have a couple questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
So one would be, do we have any examples where we've done this in the past, where in a commercial corridor, there was an alley of some type that was then reverted to the landowners nearby?
Well, the museum edition was vacated, but then they went through the replatting process, I believe, to actually take ownership of that. So, but there's other instances, many in the past, where neighbors have gotten together to vacate the alley. The city loses interest in it, but they don't replat it.
But in a commercial or a residential sense, I get
Yeah.
it. Basically, you get rid of the alley, you just have a bigger, property. So I'm just curious if we've done this.
Well, this
downtown.
block
Are there-
itself
Yeah.
has.
Okay.
This is just a small portion that's remaining.
And there's been no discussion of them intending to replat. Nobody's requested or suggested.
No, they're
that.
not intending on doing that, and it probably would not be feasible with the cost of moving all the infrastructure. We have storm and sanitary sewer under there.
So my only concern is that, because I'm not a super fan of alleys in general, unless they have a specific purpose, because I think they just cause a lot of problems. But I'm just concerned that this might become whose job is it to maintain its space? It's a very visible part of downtown, and it's not just a yard. So at some point, this asphalt or whatever, concrete, whatever it is going to have to be redone. So I'm just not hearing that there's a plan for that in the future. And I guess it wouldn't be a quote unquote problem, but it'll be downtown and visible to everybody.
Thank you. City manager.
I guess to respond to my fellow commissioner, same question that I had, but also generally with alleys, anyways, we would go to the adjacent property owners and have them help to cover those costs. A lot of times, if there's a petition to do that, and because it's concrete, I don't know that would become a big pressing issue in the future. But then my comment on this was, the reason I made the motion was because this is really an alley to nowhere right now. And looking at what the future development could potentially be on the museum site, as far as accessing into the block itself, it does seem like vacating it makes sense to provide the library and the adjacent building owners in the church the opportunity to retake that land. Yeah.
Create a plan.
Yeah, and create a plan. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Simmons,
Yes.
Blake,
Yes.
Mazade,
Yes.
Keener,
Yes.
Seifert,
Yes.
Willett Leroy,
Yes.
Gowron,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Yep.
Take the next public hearing.
This is case 2024-26, a request to amend the plan unit development at Harbortown to allow for the construction of 28 new condo units. The amendment proposes 8 new structures, 6 fourplexes and 2 duplexes for a total of 28 units. The original PUD was approved in June of 1990. The plans included a maximum of 250 residential units. It appears that there's about 190 today. However, the timeline has lapsed to continue on with those developments. Unfortunately, we do not have a copy of the original plan. A lot of the records before 1990 were not retained correctly, so we do have a copy here of what, if you want to pass that down, of what we do have. It just shows a portion of the development actually in the area where the additional units are going, and it does show units in most of those locations. There has always been discussions each time this has come back for an amendment about the sidewalks. Just a note, looking through the records, the PUD was amended in 2002 to add 3 additional duplexes along Fulton Street. The amendment noted that the original agreement for sidewalks for the PUD is retained. During a July 2002 Planning Commission meeting, it was noted that in previous amendments, the issue of pedestrian walkways has come up. The original PUD required walkways, which are sidewalks, to be provided when the PUD became more fully developed. The issue needs to be resolved Cement sidewalks may not be practical in the development. A boardwalk may be cost prohibitive. An option may be that pedestrian bike lane be painted on the existing street to demarc a pedestrian area that will prompt motorists to mindful of pedestrians and cyclists. The existing swath of pavement is fairly wide and open, which can actually promote speeding in the development. So that was a little excerpt from the last time it was discussed in 2002. I think it warrants maybe a decision on what we're going to do here. Personally, I think it would be a little much to ask them to put sidewalks in the entire development, but maybe a portion of it would make sense. Could you pull up the Google Maps? We can see that the development, most of it would be on the west side of West Harbortown Circle. The way those are proposed now, without sidewalks, doesn't give me much concern. There's about 11.5 foot front setback to these developments. If there's no sidewalk, it really doesn't matter too much, but if a sidewalk were to go in, I would encourage those to be pushed back to 18 feet so that cars don't overhang a sidewalk. That's an issue we try to get around with all of our residential housing throughout the city, because it really just sets a homeowner up for failure when your car extends over the sidewalk. So there is room. There's quite a bit of setback, over 40 foot of setback on all of these units. So if the sidewalks, if it's decided that a sidewalk needs to go in, I would encourage those to be pushed back. If not, or if the sidewalk's on the other side of the street, then I believe that they're fine where they are. We did have some notes from the other departments. The fire department has noted that a turnaround is needed at the end of Channel View Point. It looks like there is enough room to do that, but it does exceed the length of 150 feet dead end, which is not allowed by the fire department. Once you exceed 150 feet, you need a way to turn around. It's standard that a stormwater permit would need to be revised for this type of development. They can get that from the engineering department. We do need a landscaping plan. However, that's pretty minimal, just for 8 additional units. I'm sure it would follow the rest of the landscaping, which looks nicely, so that would be easy to approve for the planning department. And we did send notice to everybody within 300 feet. We did send you a copy of all of those letters, so you've had a chance to read them. And I believe that's it.
That's it. Any questions for Mike?
Just want to know if we could specify Channel View Point on the Google.
So
Channel
oh, go ahead.
Well, on the Google Maps, it doesn't say it, but it's just to the left where it says boat ramp.
Thank you.
Oh, there you go. Now you can see it.
You see it now? Okay. Other questions? So, Mike, 2 things I have. One is you mentioned the possibility of pushing the setback, the front yard setback requirements to, I think you said 18 feet or 17 feet?
18 feet.
18
yeah.
feet. So that's not a recommendation or a condition in the staff recommendation.
It's not, but the more we thought about the sidewalks since we wrote this last week, we noticed that if the sidewalk wasn't going to go on, then they're fine. But if we do want a sidewalk, we have to pick maybe which side to go on, or any at all. But if it was to go on that west side, some of those are, the existing houses are already built a little close. The first one there at the corner is not. That's about 20 foot setback, so you wouldn't have an issue. But those other ones south of that, those are also at about 12 foot or so. So you may see some issues.
So that setback that you're talking about wouldn't really work for some of the existing units.
Yeah, but going forward, I think it'd be beneficial to make sure that those wouldn't do that. And, with an additional 5 or 6 feet, whatever, you're not really going to notice that from the street view of how the houses look. So, if it was 20 feet, I think that would be a little different, but.
So was there any discussion with the applicant about this?
No, we haven't had a chance to talk to them about
Okay.
that.
Okay. And then with respect to the sidewalk issue, you referenced what has occurred and the fact that a decision needs to be made. Does staff have some position with respect to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think sidewalks were initially part of the development. I do believe, going forward, we should put them in where we can, where to connect. And I think there's a good opportunity where they're going in now, maybe to connect from Fulton down to Indiana, where you're mostly installing them new anyways. That would be a way to get some sidewalk throughout the development. I would not encourage marking them on the street as previously mentioned from 2002. I understand people already walk in the street, but I don't think you need to mark that.
So that not recommendation, but that's possible suggestion. You
Yeah.
don't like that any longer.
Yes.
Okay. And with respect to the sidewalks, if sidewalks are required in front of the new units, I mean, that to me would make a lot of sense. Then you'd have sections of sidewalks that don't connect.
Well, I would suggest connecting those.
Yeah,
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? So I know the applicants here. Would they please come forward and state your name for the record and tell us anything else that you'd like us to know about this request?
Good afternoon. My name is David Gertis. I reside at 3430 Sandock Court in Harbortown. I'm a member of the Board of Directors and would like to thank the planning staff and the Planning Commission for this opportunity to amend our PUD for the infill of the original development. I don't want to reiterate everything that's already in the staff comments, but just to say that this was what we see now is phase one of what had originally been planned to be a two-phase project that would have included up to 400 condominiums. Obviously, the developer was only able to complete the 50 buildings and the 190 units that now exist. We note that there are a number of curb cuts already throughout the development, and in fact a foundation that was years ago removed, I guess after the developer vacated this project. But this suggests that these parcels were part of his original intention to substantially finish his original plan. By the way, phase two has long since been abandoned, if I haven't commented on that already. And our request is essentially to complete phase one with these 28 units, bringing the total number to 218. Obviously, with this plan, it would be somewhat less dense, we believe, than had been part of the original phase one. The current board of directors has endorsed this development plan and an agreement with Bosgraff Homes of Holland for its completion. And Mike Bosgraff is here to further comment on the development.
Good evening. I'm Mike Bosgraff with Bosgraff Homes, 148 South River Avenue in Holland, Michigan. We're a third generation, soon to be fourth generation builder where we build up and down the lake shore, and so we're excited about this project. I think staff did a good job of looking it over. We believe we're going to substantially improve that area, and we'll mimic the homes that are out there, design-wise, exterior design-wise, color-wise, and we're excited to go forward. I'll sit down. You got a big agenda, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Well, before you leave, and then Mr. Gerst, don't go too far away. Any questions for Mr. Bosgraff? Yes.
Have
yeah.
you created or submitted any elevations of your intended designs as of now?
We haven't submitted any. I do have them.
I just think it would be helpful to understand the vision. If you have them.
It's up. It's up to you whether you want me to submit them or not.
Do you have them with you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you have? Are you have the elevations or the boards that depict the appearance?
Yes.
I didn't know what tech we wanted, so I.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful.
This is what we showed the association board, when we have board meeting with them. And, this is the ranch condominium plan, which is, I can't point to it. It's called the Millhouse Duplex on your plan. And the color is the same as the existing homes out there. The roofing is the same, windows are the same, garage doors are the same. So, you know, we should pretty much mimic the design there. It's a fairly typical ranch design, one bedroom on the main floor, an office, and then the ability to have a couple bedrooms in the lower level. We have one of those. This is the fourplex, which is the three buildings in the middle where your cursor is at. It's a plan we built in several markets. It's typically 2 stories with 2-3 bedrooms upstairs, running 14 to 1,700 square feet. The exteriors have 2 stall garages. These are the 3 bedrooms. The 2 bedrooms are in the middle with single stalls. They sell typically somewhere in the $375,000 to $400,000 range. We are, they're fiber cement board siding. The homes that are out there right now are cedar. You know, the fiber cement would be an improvement, but it would also mimic, you know, the same texture and profile as is out there.
You're talking about the same elevation that's existing, some of which will have a walkout.
Yeah, the units that are right next to it are actually 6plexes, which we just didn't really want to jam that many units in that area. So it's not exactly the same as the buildings that are right next door, but it's the same exterior materials, roughly the same shape. And then the one that is called the Sand Doctor Duplex. That one, we are going to exactly mimic the 2 buildings that are right next door to it. It's really the only thing that's going to fit there, and I think it's the only thing that really deserves to be there is, you know, mimicking what's there. Now, nobody has that plan in CAD, so we're going to have to, you know, go redesign it, but we'll redesign it to the same plan.
It's going to look the same.
Yes.
Well, just one more. I understand you haven't submitted your landscaping plan as of now.
I'm not.
But my understanding, and I think this, my assumption is that when people drive through this development, it actually stands out a bit for the way that it's landscaped. And so would you intend to carry that throughout the rest of the development as it is now?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor?
Piggyback on the landscaping questioning. Will the landscaping include any kind of buffer between the rear properties on Nelson Street versus the new ones being developed?
Oh, in the rear. We haven't contemplated it. I think we're open to a conversation.
Okay.
Do you have a suggestion, Ian?
Well, no, I just had received some input and concerns about residents on Nelson Street, indicating that, you know, particularly in one area, it's increasing the density considerably there, you know, whereas it's open space now, and so wondering about a buffer. But then looking at the original PUD, the middle, let's talk about the 3 quadplexes, the 3 Shorewood fourplexes.
Yep.
That middle one was originally envisioned just to be an open space parking lot. So now we're proposed putting a building there, so I could see a stronger rationale as to why, you know, to have a buffer there, because, you know, when they purchased their home, they knew with the original PUD at least that it was open space, and now it's a building. So just curious about the expectations for a landscaping buffer.
Yeah, I think my standard answer there would be, we probably don't want to look at them about as much as they want to look at us. So if there's a natural way to do that, or a tree buffer zone, you know, I think we'd be happy to work with staff on, as part of the landscaping plan, proposing some trees there or some kind of buffer there. I do think, we haven't talked about it. Again, I think it'd be a conversation with staff. The marina viewpoint between that one and Channel viewpoint, that fourplex, you know, backs up to a parking lot. You know, I think we can greatly soften that area by putting the building there. Right now it's, you know, a field, and then you got the view of the cars and all that. I think by putting the building there, landscaping it, maybe putting a fence if allowed, and, you know, a tree barrier, you know, I think we can greatly soften that area.
Thank you.
I just have to remind everybody to try to use evergreens whenever possible, because we're here all year long.
Yep.
Have you
We
been
like
out there to
greenery.
see all the evergreens that are out there?
I mean, I go out there on occasion. I love the beach like everybody else. Drive through.
Any other comments or questions? Any questions for the owners? Mr. Gertis? City Manager?
No, I'm good. No, thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
You, go, well,
It's
hang
for,
on.
I guess it's for the
Mr. Bosworth, hang on a
Harbortown
second.
Board Director. It's for you, sir. Mr. Curtis, I believe?
Gertis.
Gertis.
Yeah, G.
Gertis.
Mr. Gergis.
Yes, sir.
We already have heard some discussion about sidewalks, and I anticipate we'll have more discussion about sidewalks
Okay.
before this meeting's over. Has there been any consideration by the board and discussion about sidewalks in a portion or the entirety of Harbortown Circle?
There has been, and it looks like you've read my notes already. No, we have over the years discussed the prospect of adding sidewalks to the development, both currently with the current board of directors and with previous boards of directors. And one of the former board members is here with us today. It's an important matter for many of our co-owners, as often, particularly in the summer months when people are out enjoying the weather and walking, they're concerned about the safety issues, which is the primary issue, of course. I and another board member actually met with Leo Evans and Dan Vanderheide in November of 2022 to discuss this, and we actually drove a proposed sidewalk route along both East and West Harbortown Circle. And our discussions included an anticipated follow-up to what we hoped would be an estimation of cost and a non-detailed engineering review done by the city, and not with all the specifics and elevations necessarily, to identify potential problems with the route that we might suggest. Unfortunately, with Leo's departure from the city, and there was no substantive follow-up except a revision of the cost estimates. And this is not to place any blame on any city member. It's just one of those things that with the change in administrative duties, we got busy with other things and then never finalized a proposal for them. So we are not unaware of the importance of the pedestrian walkways, but the resolution we believe will take will take some considerable planning with the appropriate city departments. So we are open to that, certainly. It's something that I believe our co-owners would support some sort of resolution.
So there is a preliminary design.
There's not really a design. There's a concept.
That had not been fully engineered or anything.
Yeah,
but
but we have an idea of which side of the Harbortown Circle it would traverse, things like that. There are some curb cuts already that would, excuse me, potentially allow us to transition from one side of the street to the next, because on the east side of West Harbortown Circle, there are some very steep driveways that you practically, for practical purposes, you couldn't put a sidewalk. It would need to be on the west side of the street at those locations. And those are some of the hurdles that we had hoped eventually to work with the city to overcome.
Okay. So it wouldn't be continuous on one side. It would need to
It would have to
potentially move
cross
back
the
and
street. It
forth
would have to cross the
different
street in
spots.
perhaps only one spot.
okay.
Yeah, we believe only one spot.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Gertis or the builder?
In regards to the sidewalk issue, at that time, did you contemplate simply a sidewalk or more of a multi-use path like a bike trail?
We considered both, frankly, but without identifying a preference for either one. But both were suggested to us by the people who had enough interest in it to actually, one or two of them actually came to the city to discuss on an informal basis some of these ideas. So either one would probably work, again, based on what the input from the city.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, this is the time for a public hearing. Anybody that would like to address this matter, please raise your hand and recognize, please come to the podium, state your name for the record. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Doug Gaynor, and I'm a resident in Harbortown. And to Commissioner Johnson, your reference to the sidewalk in particular, but obviously to all the members, there's been a great deal. I was the president prior to David, and there's been a lot of discussion about sidewalks. One of the issues I have is, and I guess I just don't know the ordinances, the policy of the city, and so on. When this was created in 1990 and then again in 1982 or whatever, there was an approved PUD by the commission and then by the city council. For whatever reason, the sidewalks were never put in, and they were part of the PUD. All of a sudden, it sounds to me like it's going to be up to the owners to pay for a sidewalk. And yet it was originally set up as for the PUD, in the PUD, for the developer to put that in. So whether that cost would have been passed on to the owners of the condos eventually or whatever, I'm concerned why the PUD and certificate of occupancy and so on was given without the completion. It seemed like the words, you kicked it, not you, but it was kicked down the road. And then it was kicked down the road again. And we keep talking about it. My concern is who's going to pay for it? It would seem to me, again, and I don't know the policies, that there shouldn't, or a PUD should not have been, the certificate of occupancy should not have been given unless an escrow or something from the developer. Now, I don't know if that all works. I'm just kind of throwing that out because a number of the owners have brought that to me is who's going to pay for it? And that's still up in the air to be discussed. But I think it's very important that the city have some response as to why no C of O, why the C of O is without a condition. In other words, okay, we'll wait till the development gets a little bit further, and we'll look at it again seriously, but we won't issue, like there's conditions set forth for approval today on this proposal. Why weren't there conditions set forth? Yeah, we'll give you the C of O, you start selling these, people can move in, but you are responsible. Do you put money in escrow? I don't know. I'm just asking a question because all of you, if you're in the same boat as we are, 190 units, 2 people living in each unit, whatever, it's going to be costly. It's going to, to put, especially where I've had people say, yeah, it would be great to put it
Mr.
from.
Gaynor, your time's up. Will you please wrap up your comments?
Yeah, I can do that if you give me a minute. I'll back off. I think I've made my point. I would say to the driveways on the west side, currently those units that are there, when a pickup truck parks in the driveway, it sticks almost out to the curb. So the consideration of setbacks so that that doesn't occur with the new units, whether it's a sidewalk or not, it shouldn't be that far out, almost at the curb. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Yes, sir. Over here.
I'm David Calkins. I live at 1675 East Harbortown Circle. I came to Harbortown in 1993, so I saw the original undertaking. I saw a lot of horse trading that went on between the city and the developer with multiple things, this sidewalk being one of them. The other thing is that this development is going to be done at the end of the road where Dockers is. And Dockers in itself brings a lot of traffic into Harbortown that wouldn't otherwise be there. And at one time, the Dockers entrance was to come off, I thought, it's Fulton, I think, at that point. Come off Fulton or Marina View Point, which I didn't know that was the name of the road. Anyway, apparently changes its name. So it was supposed to come off the main road and not off Harbortown Circle, the access to the Dockers parking lot. And that was one of the trade-offs that was made because Darien would like to have had those properties to develop. So they traded the access road so that it now comes off Harbortown Circle, which creates a lot of traffic on Harbortown Circle itself, just from Dockers. And this development is going to occur at that same place, with old people in the road, like me, and no sidewalks. So I think the sidewalk issue is not a trivial issue. It's been kicked around, it's been made in such a manner that the developer apparently is not responsible for the cost, but we are because we are residents there. So I don't know if the access road can be changed because the need for sidewalks is reduced if you change the access road to the Dockers parking lot, because it takes that traffic off Harbortown Circle and puts it out on Fulton or Marina View Point. So the point is that if we take another approach, which is to change the access road, I don't know if the sidewalks are necessarily as important as they are today. I also served as the president of Harbortown back in 93 or 98, I guess, when we took over from John Darien. So you got three of us here in the audience today. So this is an important issue because we're here. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Calkins. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Becky Matakis. I have a house on Nelson Street, and my mother has a unit in Harbortown. My mother's elderly and would really like to be able to have sidewalks, so I'm just here to voice my support to keep the sidewalks in the plan.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to address this issue? If not, then we'll go to the viewing audience. If you'd like to address this issue, please call 231-724-6721 and state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes to address the Planning Commission. While we're waiting, I do want to point out, I think it's important, we did, as Mike said, receive a number of written comments, whether it was by email or what have you. We did receive comments both in favor and in opposition. So I just want to draw your attention to that. Sarah, do we have anybody? So if not, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion and support from this side to close the public hearing. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Post same sign. Motion carried. Now I'll entertain a motion on this item. But before we do that, one of the things we did last meeting with an item that had some a number of details, we had some discussion before we took a motion, and I'm willing to do that if you would like to. Otherwise, we can go directly to a motion. What would you like to do? Yes.
I had a question too.
All right, so let's do that. So I'll start over here.
Like the gentleman said, I would like to know who would be responsible for those sidewalks.
It would be the residents of the development, the association.
Thank you.
The association.
The association would be responsible, yes.
And so, with that being said, we would make a a motion for them to put in sidewalks with their own funds?
Well, I think what needs to happen is a motion with any conditions that we want to put on, and the staff has proposed 4 conditions and have recommended that we address the sidewalk matter, which could be included in the conditions, and whatever that ends up being would be included in the motion with respect to whether we want to require sidewalks, not require sidewalks. If sidewalks were required, what would be the limits of those sidewalks?
We wouldn't weigh in on necessarily who pays for it. So
Yeah.
the default position, sorry if I may.
No,
the
go
default
ahead.
position is that the HOA would be responsible for it since they now, collectively own the property. But it doesn't necessarily mean that would be the end result. Like, yes, the default position is the expectation they would pay, but I remember just over a decade ago, I think it was last year, I'm a city manager, and that the HOA kicked in money for resurfacing of the road, and the city kicked in the balance, and they kicked in a certain amount, and the city paid for the balance. And so, the default position is they would be paying, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the absolute end result.
Yeah, and I think it's important. The HOA is the homeowners association, which is the Harbortown Condo Association. Leah? Go ahead, finish. I'm sorry.
If I'm not mistaken, from the opportunities I've had over there, visiting homes there, and also going to Dockers, there are no sidewalks currently, right?
No, there are not any sidewalks in the development. The only sidewalks that are there, and I think Mr. Gertis referenced them, at a couple corners, intersections, there are sidewalk, I don't even know what you call them. They're just sidewalk that would serve as the crosswalks for those intersections.
Thank you.
So there aren't really any sidewalks.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, Leah.
A question, do we know if the current HOA or the neighborhood itself has an age requirement? Is this a 55 and older? Or is there no age requirement to live in Harbortown that we're aware of?
Is there an age
Is there an age requirement to live in Harbortown?
So the question is, and Dave, I'll let you answer that. I mean, it's the public hearing is closed, but I think because there is a question for Harbortown. So the question is there an age requirement or limit?
There is no age limit, upper or lower, no. But we happen to not have, at the current time, any young families. This might open up an opportunity for them, but no, there are no limits in our bylaws.
Thank you. And so that just leads to based on the info I've received and seen so far, that there does seem to be an overwhelming support of the idea that there needs to be some type of path through the development, and that this expansion of the development basically provides that opportunity. However, there is some kerfluffle that seems to have occurred with the previous PUD, and I think it's helpful for us to understand exactly, if there's any requirement on us to try to resolve that, whether it's through a collaborative process with the HOA and the city. But certainly I think that everybody can see that this can be a much more conducive environment for the current residents, potential new residents, which would involve people of all ages, from my understanding.
My comments about this development is, I think, and I saw, the comments that we've had both in favor and in opposition, but, I think the fact that the new homes that are being proposed are of the same style and color as the existing homes, I think they're going to be very compatible with the existing neighborhood. The new homes meet the goal of the city of providing new or additional homes. I think that's important. The density issue, I think, is really a non-issue. Originally there was an approval for 250 units, only 190 were built, another 28 units really doesn't make a whole lot of difference in my mind. The sidewalk issue is a difficult issue. I think I'm concerned about the fact that I'm concerned about the city at this point, whether it's the planning commission or the city commission, requiring sidewalks when that issue really wasn't dealt with for whatever reason in the past. In fact, I think in addition to what Mike noted in 2002, I recall that there was additional discussion later than that, during or in between 2002 and 2013, where there was discussion with respect to that, and there was at least a tacit decision not to require the sidewalks. So, I think that is kind of in my mind, kind of a non-issue for the existing development. Now, whether we want to require sidewalks as a result of the new development, I think is another issue. But I would point to a couple things. The Planning Commission in the past has been pretty emphatic about requiring sidewalks for new development. And I think I agree with that. And the Planning Commission has been emphatic about requiring sidewalks for redevelopment properties, i.e. the former General Hospital property that we just had recently. I think the difference here, though, is that this is really more of a scattered site or an infill project. And so we have some properties that are some homes that are being developed. And as I said earlier, if we require sidewalks in front of those new homes, it really doesn't do anything, doesn't help the situation, because those sidewalks wouldn't connect to any other sidewalks. To require Harbortown to put sidewalks in throughout the development as a result of this minor change to the PUD, I think it would be onerous, and I don't think that would be a good thing to do. Something short of that, maybe, that makes some sense. There has been some discussion about maybe requiring some kind of sidewalk or bike or pathway, excuse me, from Fulton to Indiana. That's really the limits of this development, with the exception of the Marina View Point, not Marina View Point, Channel View Drive. Homes, yeah. And so there is one building proposed on the south side of Indiana. So, it's Indiana, and probably wouldn't have to go further south at all. But, I think that's something we should consider. We really haven't, in the past that I can remember, required sidewalks in an infill type project. It's really been more in respect of a new development or a redevelopment. So that's my piece, and Mr. Mayor, here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned just a moment ago about the thought that there was some tacit agreement subsequent to 2002 in which sidewalks was not going to be required. But do we have any indication that the PUD is formally amended to remove the sidewalk requirement?
I've never seen anything that said that it's been removed.
Okay. So in my mind, it's a little bit different than saying, well, we're looking at doing a PUD and some infill, and so it'd be inappropriate to require sidewalks, beyond the immediate area that you're talking about changing in the PUD, because the underlying PUD requires sidewalks. And as I've heard from residents, let me finish, please.
Yeah,
As I've heard from residents, I've gotten grief from some residents about there not being sidewalks there. And they knew that there was sidewalks required in the PUD, and in their opinion, it was the city that dropped the ball and not required it, and did not compel the developer to do so. And so here we are looking at amending a PUD, and the underlying PUD does have a sidewalk requirement throughout that we have not enforced before. And do we now take the opportunity to say, hey, no, we're not going to ignore this or kick the can down the road? Like, no, this is going to be resolved now. We understand it's a relatively small portion of the whole development that you're talking about changing and adding, but there is this requirement in the underlying PUD that has been ignored. And we're hearing from both existing Harbortown residents and formers and other community members say this cannot be ignored any longer. And so I would be more inclined to getting this resolved and having the sidewalk piece be a requirement throughout Harbortown Circle, east and west. The question of how to pay for it is a different matter, but I do think that that's something that we should be requiring.
I think, I understand what you're talking about, but if we take that point of view, if we take that point of view, then we have a approved plan already, approved PUD already that includes these homes and more. So are we saying then that, why are we here then? They could just go forth and build those homes without an amendment to the PUD and more.
Is it, if I'm not correct, and maybe this requires the board director, but it's my understanding it's that your own bylaws is what's precluding new development being built.
But the those bylaws can be amended, and they will have to be amended in order to move forward. So
Okay.
that's not really an issue relative to the PUD.
So then the development, that construction, according to the original PD, could proceed. At the same time, the city could be enforcing the sidewalk.
Well, I'm just saying that if you're saying that the sidewalks can be enforced, then why are we here discussing the approval of these buildings? Because they're already approved and
No,
more.
Not the exact configuration.
Okay, but they
as we
could-
talked
they-
about the PUD that was shown here, one section was a parking lot, not a building.
Okay,
and
but-
so what has been presented here differs from the original PUD.
A bit.
And that's why we're talking about amending it. I agree with you on the density piece.
That's
not
that's
an
not
objectionable piece, to me.
that's not why we're
Previous
here
PUD
though.
had similar or greater density than what's being proposed now. It's just a matter of configuration, layout, and the sidewalk piece is of concern. But
I don't think that's why we're here, though, at this point. We're here because Harbortown understands, I think, that they need to amend the PUD because construction was completed or it ended, and there was a period of time that went by, and so therefore they have to come back to the city. Now, if they wanted to construct as the original plan called for, I mean, it sounds to me like they could do so. And I don't think I would guess the staff doesn't agree with that.
well, yeah, our planning manager can weigh in because I remember hearing that if it's not built according to the PUD, then that there's a certain time frame, in which case it's no longer.
You have up to 5 years to complete the project, and these also are slightly different than proposed originally, so it does need to come back for approval because the time lapsed from when you need to complete the project.
Yeah, and I don't disagree that should happen. I'm just saying that, it seems to me that, one aspect of the plan can't survive and others can't. The time frame. I guess that's my point of view. If 5 years ended and the plan was completed or can't go any further, then is the sidewalk issue extinguished at the same time? I don't know that. The other thing I would say that has changed the dynamics is that with the docks development going forward, that is going to, in my opinion, going to add significant pedestrian traffic to Harbortown, and should Harbortown bear that full brunt of providing sidewalks for not only their residents but other residents. Leah.
I just want to clarify that my assumption is that the point of doing this essentially is because there was an expiration of the time, right? So that the previous project was either paused or not completed in time, and so now basically there's an opportunity. It might be an opportunity cost, but having to go back and say, is it still good? And since that time, I'm getting the overwhelming sense that sidewalks are something that will make this community safer and more livable for not only the people in that area, but people who use the entire neighborhood, which they will as it continues to get denser because we have other developments in the neighborhood. However, I also think that it's an opportunity for the folks who are now looking to develop the property to work with those neighbors to make it a cohesive space and potentially in concert with the city as needed to get the sidewalks resolved. But I do think that they need to be required and that we can't leave that up in the air where there's any possibility where they wouldn't.
Okay. Any more discussion on these items? City manager.
I'm liking the discussion. I think it's there's a lot of good points being made here. I'm wondering if a way to proceed is maybe there's two motions that occur here. and I don't know how the rest of the commissioners feel about that, because I'm not really hearing any opposition to allowing the development to continue as it was originally planned. It's the sidewalk portion of it, and how do we incorporate that? And is it's probably not going to come out quite right, but is the way we approach the sidewalk portion of this conversation, do we want it to impact the ability to finish out the project as originally proposed? I think that's the question I think we need to kind of address.
The opportunity comes.
I agree.
Yeah, thank you. That was what I was
I
looking
agree.
for.
And I think that might be the better way to deal with this, whether it's through two motions or I guess I would like that better than a motion and an amendment to the motion. Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Shea, you mentioned a few moments ago about the sand docks and the impact on this development. A couple months ago, as we were evaluating the PUD for the sand docks, it was brought up that, and internally in my conversations with staff, it was brought up that Harbortown was looking at potentially changing its PD and bringing something forward. In that conversation, I had expressed interest in the connection between the sand docks the sand docks development and the Harbortown PUD, not just being emergency access, but a full access of a roadway. And at that time, it was, we need to be engaging Harbortown as part of this PUD, and we can potentially include that in the Harbortown PUD. I don't see any reference or discussion to that point. So I'd be interested in hearing if there have been any further conversations about the full open access between the sand docks and Harbortown. But I have talked with some residents of Harbortown about that prospect. They like it. The few that I've not spoken to all of y'all, but the few I've spoken to have liked it, with the additional caveat of put sidewalks in, and if the city helps fund the sidewalks, that will make us happier. I do think it's important to have full access between the sand docks and Harbortown, so there's a secondary access point to Harbortown. It's not just through the main Beach Street, which gets awfully congested in the summertime. And so from a just ease of traffic, emergency access, and would be beneficial for Harbortown residents to get in and out of there. And I don't think it would be overwhelmed by tourists. Tourists are going to be directed by Google Maps to go through Lakeshore Drive to Beach Street. They're not going to be routing them through the sand docks, through Harbortown. And so we're not going to see a ton of non-residential traffic going through there. That full connection would really benefit existing residents and their own guests. Do we have any insights? Have there been further conversations around that? Maybe, I'm looking at you, Jake. Maybe you can weigh in on this, because I think part of it is you and I were having this conversation with the manager.
Good afternoon. The conversation, as I recall, was whether or not there could be any public right-of-way connectivity between the docks PUD and Harbortown, right?
Having that full access, not just emergency access.
Yeah, refreshing my whole memory. As it stands, I don't believe the docks or Harbortown have made any requests to amend a PUD, and we have not proactively pursued any street grid change to that effect. I think, if I recall our conversation, we wanted to see the site plan, and one piece of that conversation included whether or not there would be pedestrian access added to Harbortown with the addition of the site plan. So we haven't gotten any further on it than our preliminary conversation. And I would think the docks would need to be consulted. The sand docks developers would have to be consulted, but they have not as of yet, to my knowledge.
Yeah, they do want that. That was in their original plan, but it was changed out of respect to, neighbors, several years ago, and it was not added back in. And the discussion when we approved the PUD, the sand docks, was like, well, it's not really appropriate to force that connection through their PUD. Let's talk to Harbortown as part of their PUD process that's forthcoming. And so that's why I was curious if there was those discussions that had happened, because I think that's important.
Yeah.
I was only going to add to the concept of connecting all of the developments, because essentially, again, in the future we want to envision Beechwood Bluffton as a cohesive neighborhood. I realize there's going to be pockets in different places and spaces, but we want to be able to move throughout the neighborhood safely, including egress. So you've mentioned access, but I want to remember that we will also need egress. So those roads and spaces go both ways.
Oh,
Sometimes people need to
two-way.
exit just as much as they need to enter.
Yeah, in my mind it was a two-way, not a
I
one-way
understand, but
access.
I want to put
yes,
that thought
clarification.
in mind. You know, it's not just getting in; it's also getting out.
I think at this point, I mean, I understand the concern and desire for access. I think that we need to confine ourselves to the request in front of us, which is the PUD amendment for Harbortown as it was presented, and then we have the sidewalk issue that seems to be
Yeah.
an add-on, if you will, but needs to be addressed. And I want to make sure that the Planning Commission understands that I'm not adverse to sidewalks. You know, I think pedestrian access is very important within a development. So, you know, I think it is important. I think we have the dilemma here where a development has occurred and it doesn't have sidewalks, and the difficulty, not only from a standpoint of cost, you know, that's obviously a big issue, but Mr. Gertis brought up the fact that putting sidewalk in certain locations in this mature development would be difficult in certain areas. Not impossible, but difficult. So I think unless there's more discussion, I think we need to move forward with some kind of action recommendation to the city commission, and whether it's in a two-step process as the city manager suggested, or in one motion. I think we need to move forward.
Is it just? Can I have a question just about the process? Is it possible to add a request or a condition whereby there is a sidewalk plan brought forth to the city commission before it would be considered? Whether or not we determine what that plan is, that we simply ask that the plan be created.
Yeah, I think we can add any condition. I think the difficulty of saying we need a plan is giving some direction to Harbortown about what that should include. I think that's maybe the difficulty. Or maybe ask, not direct, but ask staff to work with developer to come up with a plan, a sidewalk plan
And resubmit potentially.
that the city commission can approve as a part of the PUD amendment. Again, I think, you know, as much direction as we can give to Harbortown and the staff would be helpful. I mean, I'm not real fond of telling the staff, go ahead and fix something without knowing what that is we want.
If I can weigh in on the side of staff, the general turnaround time between the planning commission meeting and the city commission meeting for these PUD approvals is week and a half to maybe 3 weeks.
Yeah.
The engineering team would not have the time to do a proper plan in the window that we would need to go through the PUD approval review.
I've identified, I think, one more issue on the sidewalks that we're kind of struggling with, and that's you mentioned the sides, right? So typically, residents are responsible for the piece of sidewalk directly in front of or adjacent to their piece of property. So in the event that the solution is that the sidewalk's only on one side of the street.
Can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I think I'm being loud. You can't hear me out there. Basically, the suggestion has been that the sidewalk in its future vision may only be on one side of the street. So the concern is not only whether residents have to pay for it, but only the residents who end up with the sidewalk are the ones responsible for, you know, paying for it. And I can see how that feels like a burden.
That's not the case in this, because it's
it'd be a shared
a
cost
home
with the
it's a
HOA.
homeowner association.
Well, then let's clarify that again, even if the sidewalk is not in front of you, you know, it's a shared.
I mean, if sidewalk is required and whatever it ends up being, that, and it's going to be required to be paid for by the residents, it'll be a homeowner association or a Harbortown condo association responsible. I think that's accurate.
Yeah, doing a quick look at GIS, there's only a handful of property owners that actually come up to that right-of-way line. That's when their unit is right there, but the actual HOA is the owner of the space in between.
Right.
Yep.
Well, the homeowners don't own the real property.
Right, exactly, yeah. So, yeah, it would be the HOA is the adjacent property owner.
Are you ready to consider a motion?
Someone have one in mind?
Could
Trying to
you
find
explain
it.
what you were speaking on, a bifurcated motion, or?
Yeah, so I was going to offer. Hold on. Sorry, I got too many tabs open. I was going to offer a motion to approve an amendment to the PUD, but then offer a second motion that a sidewalk plan be developed for approval of the city commission.
I think that's what Leo was talking about.
Yeah, but do it in two motions, so then that way we can, because I don't want the two to get too intermingled.
Yeah,
That is a time frame on that. Just
And yeah,
which is
and we
when by,
yeah.
which comes 1st.
So,
Yes.
your motion, though, with respect to the sidewalks, would it include a requirement for sidewalks with a plan to be developed? And what would be I guess the question is, if that's the case, what would be the scope of that, or the limits of that requirement?
And that part I haven't formulated in my head, and I'm open to my fellow commissioners' input on that.
Well, what I would suggest then, if the planning commission is willing to take this in bites, to make a motion to take action on the PUD amendment request with the regarding the first four condition, and then address the sidewalk matter separately, as the manager said.
Yeah.
I guess.
Go ahead.
I guess I'm just struggling with the rationale as to why we would separate that. Like, if the desire is to have a sidewalk, why not just include it as a condition? Like, why would we have a separate standalone motion for sidewalks? Because then we get ourselves in that situation that happened, back in 1992, where it's like, hey, this is a requirement to do this, but if we're separating it out and it's not a actual condition for this amendment, then again, it creates an opportunity where you kick the can down the road or just not do it. So that's why I'm just struggling with why would we separate it out versus saying, hey, no, we want sidewalks.
Yeah, I think part of it has to do with what that looks like, because I think right now, with respect to sidewalks, where are they going to go? What are the limits? I mean, it would be easy to include in the motion. I think they have to be from Fulton to Indiana, or from Fulton all the way around, and include or not include the cul-de-sacs. I mean, I think those are issues that have to be addressed. And particularly with respect to the terrain difficulty, and landscaping, and irrigation, and those kinds of things that come into play with requiring sidewalks in front of some of the existing units. Leah.
I'm wondering if maybe the question just hasn't been asked, much like I asked if we had elevations available. Has the developer considered the future sidewalk in part of their plans? Have there been discussions currently? Is there a reason why we can't ask the developer what their current sidewalk plan is?
Go ahead.
I'm not answering for the developer, but I guess kind of where I was coming from, where my brain went on that is because these are infills. If we're just requiring it on the new areas, and you get sidewalks to nowhere.
Nobody wants that.
And nobody wants that. And so kind of where my brain was going was, what's that sidewalk plan? And since Mr. Gertis noted that in 22 there was that meeting, there's been some staff changeover since then. I don't know what that plan looks like. And so just trying to understand what it was. I have a concept, I think, but I don't know if that's the right one. And so thinking if it was on the interior, away from the beach, interior is what I'm saying there. is kind of how I had it in my head, but I don't know if that's accurate. So I'm just trying to understand how those things go together, and I don't want us to put a meaningless requirement on it that's not going to be followed through or can't be followed through, and trying just to understand how those different components work together.
That's why I mentioned the fact that there are some physical aspects that have to be considered if sidewalks are required in front of some of the existing homes.
I do have a question, but I know that Commissioner Keener.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't feel comfortable with just having sidewalks to nowhere. That's just going to throw off the whole look and feel of this community. And so I prefer Jonathan's idea in making the sidewalk plan separate to at least give opportunity for a sidewalk plan to be developed for all of it, but with a preference for those newer developments that it do be required, in hopes that they can talk to the board as well on how they're going to pay for the portions that they have to pay for. But as far as timeline, I don't know what that would look like. But because don't we move forward with most of our developments now have to have some type of sidewalk, and so we have to keep a standard.
So I'm gonna go back to Leah for a second, because you mentioned about asking the developer of the Hubbardton Condo Association. I don't object to that if you want to talk to them about that, but I will say that Mr. Gertis already talked about what their discussion has been and kind of their approach to this issue. And the other thing I would say is that the plan that's submitted doesn't include sidewalks.
I understand, and so I guess my thought there was instead of assuming that we always get the minimum, that perhaps we could, maybe make an assumption that there's a willingness on the behalf of the developer to resolve this rather than, so if we approve the PUD with a condition that a sidewalk plan will be submitted for approval, and that sidewalk plan must be approved before the PUD can go forward. We've looked at the actual overall plan. We've said we agree that we can do additional infill, but just like the landscaping plan, if it's not something that is acceptable, then the rest of the development has to wait.
I'm comfortable with that. The thing I don't want to do, which is a little different than a landscape plan, is we push that off on staff because they've done this 100 times. I don't want to put them in a position of having to decide whether the scope of the plan is what you all think or the planning commission thinks. So I think we need to have some definitive idea about what that should be.
And maybe we just ask them to come back. That's my 2 cents.
Well, that was my question. And I wholeheartedly agree. We do not want to be doing sidewalks just for a little portion of it or just where these new houses are going in, because there's, sidewalks nowhere. I think we should have continuous and complete sidewalks as reflected in the original PUD, or at least intended with the original PUD. My question, is, would we not just refer this back to staff and until you have a PUD amendment that includes a sidewalk plan for us to consider, or approve it with the condition that that sidewalk plan needs to be included before it goes to the city commission for the city commission consideration. So it's not just hanging out there and may or may not get done subsequently. So that's what I'm wondering. Refer it back to you all and then get that a proposal to be included with this and bring it to the planning commission, or include as a condition for city commission consideration that a sidewalk plan is developed in between now and it goes to the city commission. Whether that's the next city commission, which is not going to happen, but a future city commission meeting.
Because I can't imagine that we're just trying to skip it. And otherwise, that's what we're doing. If we're not saying, let's have a complete plan, you need to talk to your neighbors, there needs to be some city discussion as to how the sidewalks will get fixed so that this PUD can be viable, then somehow we're just trying to skip it.
How it's going to be viable?
Right. I mean, the sidewalks, we feel that are a piece of the overall development that needs to be included for it to be
Right, but I don't think you can say this development isn't viable. It's been in existence for 30 years.
I mean, future plan. So.
Okay, Mike, do you have any comments about what we're talking about?
Tabling is certainly not out of the question until they come back with a plan for the sidewalks. I don't know, maybe the city manager would know if we have the ability to pause it until it goes to the city commission.
You have discretion.
I mean, there's a little bit of discretion, but past experience that I've had is generally things that are approved by the planning commission go to the next or the following city commission meeting. If and usually if there's conditions like this, it's kicked to staff, but it's
Well, the planning commission, and I don't advocate this, but the planning commission does have the ability to table action, but it then comes back to the planning commission and not to the city commission. I think one thing we've tried to do for many years is to, if we have issues that come up like this that are a bit of a conundrum, we've tried to work through those or directed staff and given them direction about what we want, because I think it's important to try to not delay approvals and therefore developments. So yeah, I'm ready to move forward with this issue one way or another, but it doesn't appear that we have consensus with respect to the sidewalk issue. Mr. Garland.
Yeah, I would, I don't want to hold it up either, and I would move forward as well. I do like, Jonathan's idea. If there is the issue of the sidewalk, that the two are separated. I could at this juncture, because even in the staff recommendation decision made regarding the installation of sidewalks, I know we don't want sidewalks going to nowhere, but at this point that might be the best you get with the new structures going up, because if there comes to be a long range plan for the rest of the development, and I think this is where it gets kind of confusing. How much sidewalk are we talking about? Are we because we're talking about the amendment to the PUD and the magnitude, a grand magnitude of no sidewalks and something that's been around for going on 35 years. And and I don't want to call it kicking the can down the road or dropping the ball or whatever else, but for whatever reason, since this stuff started rolling out in the late 1980s, it was, decided in some way, shape, or form that the point wasn't going to be pushed. But at this juncture, I think we do have to separate out the two, because I think that a long-term plan, I know that there is some appetite on the part of the residents and the HOA, is recent as 2022 to talk about sidewalks for the existing development, but I think it's essential that we give them the opportunity to move forward on the amended plan for the new construction, and if that means a sidewalk plan for the new construction, and at this point, sidewalks to nowhere aren't necessarily always going to be sidewalks to nowhere as things develop out. But I would hate also to hold up the opportunity and the desire of the parties before us to begin moving forward.
So let me make a suggestion. There seems to be some consensus that there needs to be sidewalks, and how that looks in the future is kind of up in the air. But with respect to the development request in front of us, really is from the area that will be developed with these new homes is between Fulton and Indiana. So, I would suggest, if the Planning Commission feels strongly that sidewalks need to be included, then perhaps we require sidewalks, and I guess it has to be determined where they go and so forth, be installed from Fulton to Indiana, because that's really the subject matter of the PUD amendment. And then if the planning commission wants to pursue something with respect to the remaining portion of Harbor Town, whether that includes the rest of West Harbor Town and East Harbor Town and cul-de-sacs, maybe that gets dealt with in a separate action.
Mr. Manager, if I may, Mr.
Yes.
Chair, Mr. Manager, you're talking about doing two separate motions. One for the request, the amendment, plus the inclusive of conditions 1 through 4, and then with regard to the question of sidewalks, having a separate motion. What would that separate motion, how would you word that separate motion with regard to sidewalks? So I can have a better understanding,
yes.
wrap my mind around it.
I'm not making this motion. I'm giving an example. The motion would be something along the lines of that the Harbor Town HOA work with city staff in DPW and planning to develop a sidewalk plan for the development consistent with what was historically proposed. And the reason I want to kind of split these out is I've been thinking about this from the standpoint of if we had infill housing in other parts of the city where we didn't have sidewalks but we desired sidewalks, we wouldn't sync those plans based on those lack of sidewalks in that instance, because I'm really seeing them as two separate issues and not wanting sidewalks to nowhere and things like that. We need sidewalks. I like sidewalks. I want sidewalks. I'm having a hard time holding this up because the city didn't do something we were supposed to do 35 years ago.
Well, the developer didn't do something.
Sorry. Well, but
the city didn't enforce it.
Yeah, and the city didn't enforce it, and that's what I'm struggling with.
Which we have current concerns from the public about similar dynamics that we need to be on top of, so we do not get into this position again.
So could we basically motion that the, is presented with number 5 being that sidewalks will be included in all new development? Because we all agree, like, that has to happen, and if we don't put it in here, who knows where the agreements go? At a bare minimum, the person developing needs to plan to put sidewalks in. And secondarily, can we agree that we need a motion to direct staff to create an overall plan for the PUD going forward? Like that we need to address the issue.
So you're talking about number 5 would be to require sidewalks as a part of the new development.
Correct. And then agreeing that thereafter, we're going to make a motion to direct staff to create an overall plan, which they're going to now need to work with the developer who's been directed to build sidewalks alongside the neighborhood, because we need a cohesive sidewalk system throughout Harbor Town.
I think we could do that. I think I think we maybe should define what we mean by the new development. What I had suggested was from Fulton to Indiana. That includes the new development, but maybe you have something else in mind.
Well, I don't actually have a overall map.
I mean, the only other part of the development would be the Channelview Drive portion, which on Fulton Street there's already sidewalk there on one side of that proposed building.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of already taken care of in some respects.
I thought you had a thought there. I'm looking and thinking. You might have a thought.
Well, I don't want to move on to.
I understand. I don't know that I have a specific space.
Okay, Mr. Gowan.
So I think the new proposal actually has lot fronting Sandbar Court with the Millhouse duplex.
What's that about Sandbar
down.
Court? What's that?
If you scroll down, it includes over down here. So it goes beyond what you were saying. It goes all the way down here. So it's half of Harbor Town Circle, basically. The PUD amendment includes half of Harbor Town Circle.
Well, look.
Almost.
Well, I'm saying, I'm saying
not
that.
quite. Okay, it doesn't go that far, but right there.
Huh? Well, it just goes to it goes to Indiana, and then there's one building south of Indiana.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we did just see a bunch of vacant spot. Are they?
It's not
Here?
that stretch probably isn't.
No, I'm
wide.
just curious. Were they? Had they considered more
Where's
housing there as well?
Here?
The Google Maps that was just up.
Further-
The setback line wouldn't accommodate.
further down. No, it's not on here. The Google Maps. See all that empty space
Oh,
right there?
Right here?
Like, had they? Was there?
That's privately owned.
Yeah,
property.
Oh,
those
that's
are
all
privately
privately owned.
owned,
That's
yeah.
not part of the HOA.
It's not
Okay,
part of it.
gotcha.
There was a recent house built there, that one that's there.
Okay.
There's 2 houses built on that side of the street.
Gotcha. I was just curious. There's a lot of space there.
Yep.
I mean, I'm okay with what they want to build the housing. I do not object to that. I really would like to see the resolution on the sidewalks. I mean, I guess my personal inclination would be refer back to staff and have a sidewalk plan brought forward as part of the PUD amendment. But I do not oppose the amendment with regard to the addition of the buildings, the new residential dwellings.
Let's put a motion on the floor, either with the sidewalks or referred back to staff, however we want, and let's see how that goes. Does anybody want to offer a motion? Mr. Gowan?
Thank you. I move that the request to amend the plan unit development at Harbortown to allow for the construction of 28 new condo units be recommended for approval to the City Commission with the following conditions. Item 1, turnaround must be incorporated at the end of Channel View Point. Item 2, additional fire hydrant must be added along Channel View Point. A stormwater permit must be obtained from the engineering department before construction commences. 4, a landscaping plan is provided. And item number 5, sidewalks will be provided in the new development extending from Fulton to Indiana.
So there's a motion, is there support?
So move. Support.
Support, okay. If motion is support, before I go into the discussion, we've had a lot of discussion about what we're going to require. I would like to give Mr. Gertis an opportunity to address these conditions, because it's obviously different than what was originally proposed. So, Mr. Gertis, you don't have to, but if you'd like to make a comment on what's being proposed, I'll allow you to do so.
If I understand, the current motion is for... Addresses the first 4 conditions? Is that what I
Yes,
understand?
yes, sir.
Okay. Harbortown is vitally interested in sidewalks as well as this development. My current fear is that, careful with my words here, that Muskegon is potentially stopping development, and if you understood the difficulty we had in finding a developer, potentially pushing away development. We are we are hopeful, and this is my personal opinion, but as a member of the board, I believe I can speak in large part for the board, that we could both get approval for the motion with those first 4 conditions, and then separately make a commitment that by the conclusion of the development, which we anticipate would be within 2 to 2.5 years, and certainly whether the development is complete or the developer chooses to discontinue further development, that the community, the Harbortown, commit to the installation of the sidewalks consistent with a plan that is agreeable or recommended by the planning department. But to condition the current approval upon sidewalks, to me, is patently unfair. Because that, we've shown a commitment already to address the concerns of our co-owners as well as the concerns of the city. But I think we need to separate this. The conditioning it upon approval of a sidewalk plan sets the whole timeline back by months, frankly, because we're going to get into winter months when very little can be done. So it's financially important to the developer, certainly. The finalization of the overall plan as quickly as possible is important to Harbortown and certainly to the city. So again, I would beg that we can agree on a motion that separately addresses our commitment and the city planning commission's directive for the installation of sidewalks.
I
May I
think,
ask Mr. Richards a question?
yeah, but I want to make a comment first. I'm not sure, and maybe you can clarify, Mr. Gertis. I think based on what you said with respect to making a commitment to a plan to install sidewalks, I'm not sure that's a whole lot different than the motion. The motion was a requirement to install sidewalks as a part of the development from it'd be a West Harbortown Circle, from Indiana to Fulton.
Okay. I think we could do that, but there are certain financial constraints that we currently have, some of which will be alleviated by the proceeds from the development itself. So that would have to be a deferral item, perhaps further down the road, a year or two.
Well, I think that the requirement, as Mr. Gowan's motion, I think, indicates, is that as a part of the development, the installation of the sidewalks would occur. I don't think that it does not mean that the installation of sidewalks have to occur as a precursor to the development.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
If I heard you correctly, Ms. Gergis, your suggestion is having a commitment, an agreement that the sidewalks would be installed within 2 years, 2 years from the date of adoption of the PUD.
From the beginning of construction, say, because that's the developer's anticipated completion.
Okay. And when you're saying sidewalks in there, you're talking about throughout all of Harbortown, or throughout all of Harbortown Circle.
I would say
as
along East and West Harbortown Circle.
Yeah, okay.
That is the desire of the majority of our co-owners, yes.
Yeah, okay, I would fully support that. I like that better than the current number 5, where it's just a condition that you have to have just this one piece, versus the commitment that you're going to have all of Harbortown, East and West, within 2 years of the date of construction being commenced, I suppose, or 2 years.
Well,
Usually,
I think one thing that the motion does, though, is that it deals with the development area currently, and then I don't think it precludes the city and Harbortown to deal with the issue of sidewalks within the remainder of Harbortown.
And I think that if we make a motion separately requesting that continued plan to occur, that we've done our due diligence as the city to say this is something that needs to happen and be planned for.
And I think maybe that goes to what the city manager, I won't speak for him, but, to me, it seems similar to what he talked about, and with respect to a motion to deal with this issue and then to deal with the long-term sidewalk matter. Okay. Is there anything else you want to say with respect to this? I wanted to give you the opportunity since we did.
I appreciate that, Mr. Tate. But again, it's going to take, conference with the planning department and, a lot of back and forth, I'm afraid. And my primary concern is the potential for delay of this project. It's been 2 years in process already for us, which is probably not uncommon, but still it's time to move forward, and now that we found a developer who's willing to take it on, high quality of craftsmanship, we're anxious to move it forward.
Okay. Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion?
Can you state your name again? I'm sorry.
David Gertis.
Thank you.
Gerdes.
Any further discussion? Not, roll call, please. Well, wait a minute. I don't want to quell.
Well, I was
any
just
discussion, so
curious.
go ahead.
because when I said that I'd like what he suggested better than condition 5, I saw heads nodding over here, including the original maker of the motion. So I was just curious if the motion would be amended to reflect what Mr. Curtis is suggesting with regard to the sidewalks.
If somebody wants to make a motion to amend the motion, we can do that, or if the maker of the motion wants to change it or accept the friendly amendment.
Well, you made that, the point of how this was specifically for this element of the PUD. But I would amend, I would ask to amend my recommendation to remove item 5 if that would be addressed in a secondary motion. So I would like to know if anybody else thinks that it's a good idea to remove it, or.
Well, we have the maker of the motion and the party the party that seconded the motion. So we need to deal with, are you withdrawing the motion, or are you amending your motion, or what do you want to do? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
Sure.
withdrawing, rescinding, amending?
I think I would.
Okay, I move to amend the underlying motion to replace condition 5 with the requirement that sidewalks throughout Harbor Town Circle East and West is installed within 2 years from the
Completion.
from the. He said, regardless of completion, within 2 years of commencement of construction.
So we have a motion. Is there a support?
Second.
We have a motion support. That is there further discussion?
Yes, I just think we may want to add the caveat that the sidewalk does not have to be on both sides of the street. Is that something that we can allow for?
I don't think we need to necessarily specify that.
Just clarify.
Because it's sidewalk going through and it doesn't say it has to be both
doesn't,
sides.
right.
It's just sidewalk has to go through. So
Fine
I think
with
it's
me.
understood that it's one or the other side.
I agree.
And I think that we as a city, this is separate from the planning commission, our team can have further conversations with Harbor Town about how to bring that forward. And perhaps it can happen sooner than 2 years, but I think it's good to have a finite commitment for the whole sidewalks.
My concern about this is that it's significantly different from requiring sidewalks from Fulton to Indiana on West Harbor Town, and that is the area of construction we're dealing with, and I think probably of most concern. Obviously, there's the issue of sidewalks throughout Harbor Town that needs to be addressed. But I think it's onerous to ask the developer or the owner to require sidewalks in an area that they're not requesting construction on, and there's significant issues that needs to be addressed with respect to who pays for all of that. How that gets constructed in areas that are already developed, what the impact of other developments are on sidewalks and the cost of those sidewalks. So I happen to like the original motion a little bit better.
A last thought on this, Mr.
It
Chair.
will not be the last thought.
The last thought on this particular amendment, yes, definitely. I understand and respect where you're coming from, Mr. Chair, about the amendment is focused on a particular area, so having a condition that speaks to a larger area. But I go back to the fact that we're amending a PUD that originally reflected a requirement for sidewalks along Harbor Town. And so with this amendment, we're simply reinforcing what the underlying PUD already required. This is not a new requirement. We're reinforcing an existing requirement. And so I'm perfectly comfortable doing that. Thank you.
but things have changed in 30 years. It's not a greenfield, where it'll be easy to construct sidewalks because there's nothing there. There is a development that's already there that would make it, difficult and additionally costly, to put sidewalks in. I'm not saying they shouldn't happen, but I think that, maybe some of the burden belongs to the city, for not enforcing, the sidewalk plan previously.
Would you be amenable to item number 6, whereby we request city staff to coordinate with both the Harbortown Condo Association and the developer and any other nearby neighbors to create a plan where we're basically still identifying the plan, and so that we understand that the city is in fact participating?
Yeah, I mean, I won't speak for the rest of it, but that's not any requirement. All it is talking about trying to prepare something, and you can't require, you can just bring parties together to talk about it. It doesn't mean that you can make them do anything.
Before talking about further conditions, can we vote on the amendment to the amendment and get that
Yeah,
resolved?
but I want to talk, I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to have discussion on the amendment to the motion.
Okay, so right now,
It got-
my
you're
amendment
right.
is to his amendment to the motion, and my amendment is just to change condition 5 so that it's not, the sidewalks within Indiana and Fulton must be constructed in tandem, with this, but that, the sidewalks throughout Harbortown Circle, east and west, must be installed within 2 years of the commencement of construction.
Right.
And so everyone understands
Yep,
that?
I do. Any other discussion on this item? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Simmons,
Yes.
Blake,
Yes.
Ms. Aid,
Before I vote, I think it's pretty obvious that I live in Harbortown, but I do not have a financial, an immediate or direct financial conflict, and as such, I will vote on it. My vote is no.
Keener,
Yes.
Seifert,
No.
Willett Leroy,
Yes.
Bowron,
No.
and Johnson.
Yes.
Five to 3.
Motion
So
passes.
motion carries. All right. So now we'll vote on the underlying motion. And
The amended amendment. Then we'll do the.
right.
Oh wait, no.
No,
yeah,
no,
no.
no,
Yeah,
no.
no. You got it right. I'm
No.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Yep.
The amendment to the PUD.
I need a parliamentarian.
Oh my dear Lord. All right, almost done with this
where's your
topic.
So we have the underlying motion, which is to approve the PUD with the 4 conditions plus the requirement for sidewalks. Correct? Are we all on the same page here? Discussion.
But with the passage of the amendment to the amendment, as that stands, is that now the requirement?
It is a requirement.
It is.
Well, it is a requirement if we approve the PUD amendment.
So it would be, the sidewalks would have to be completed within 2 years of the commencement of work.
For the Harbortown East and West,
Yes. Okay.
correct?
All right, thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioners Johnson,
Yes.
Bowron,
Yes?
Willett Leroy,
Yes.
Seifert,
Yes.
Keener,
Yep.
Ms. Aid,
Yes.
Blake,
Yes.
and Simmons.
Yes.
I think they're just clarifying.
And we expect that'll be on the city commission agenda for October 22nd. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Get that motion right.
Okay, moving on.
Get that motion right.
We got some more items if you want to stick around.
So our next few cases are regarding our zoning reform initiative. We have a short presentation by Jamie Pesch in our office to talk a little bit about what we have done since the June work session meeting when we discussed these ideas. Since then, staff has put all this information and these ideas out on our Connect Muskegon page, and we held 3 input sessions in August. So Jamie's going to describe a little bit about those work sessions and how we changed some of our recommendations based on that public input.
But it is connected.
All right, Jamie, you're up. And Mike, as you said, we have a number of public hearings, but we're talking about the same thing. Right?
Yes. So we're talking about, reducing minimum lot sizes for building and also adding in more housing choices. And the way that looks, there's 5 or 6 different amendments to the ordinance to push that forward.
And another major thing is with respect to parking requirements.
And parking, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you use this one? I know this one works.
I did the Google Drive, or the OneDrive. I don't think I have none there.
I know this one.
Yeah, I need a flash drive to do that.
Sounds good.
Is it the adapter issue?
You gotta plug it back in down there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, never mind.
Is that it?
Did you use this one? Yeah, I didn't use that one. I used one that I had.
Did you?
I mean, you have to use that one.
Try this one.
Yeah. So, we need like a. All right, so we are again talking about zoning reform and specifically the ordinance amendments that are being proposed today. Last time we talked, we briefly overviewed why we are approaching the city with these ideas. Originally had 4 ideas, and all of them were meant to, in one way or another, address the housing shortage that we're facing. 3,000 housing units needed by 2027 to keep up with demand, rising housing costs due to this shortage, and a large number of vacant residential lots in our city. These are housing units that are needed at all price points. This is not a situation where any specific type of housing is required. We have everything for sale, rental at a range of different price points. All 4 of the ideas that we presented to you earlier this year address our single-family zoning districts. This covers about 40% of the total zoned land area in the city. We've also overviewed a few successful case studies in zoning reform. This is Auburn, Maine, a city that is in a similar size as Muskegon, a small city. They proposed zoning amendments and approved them that allowed for small multifamilies up to triplexes in all residential zoning districts. They eliminated parking minimums, reduced minimum lot sizes. They went smaller than what we're proposing today, and they increased housing units per acre as a result of all of these changes. The capacity went from 9 to 16 housing units per acre. The impact of these changes was a boost in housing supply and that eased restrictions on housing and density. See on the left side here, a massive jump from 2021 to 2022 construction of multifamily housing units. Also looked at Minneapolis, Minnesota previously, and they did many of the same things, allowing duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, and accessory dwelling units in all residential zones, and they eliminated parking minimums and reduced minimum lot sizes as well. This slowed the rise in rental rates compared to the state of Minnesota. Minneapolis, you can see on the left side. The change in housing units in Minneapolis specifically was a 12% increase, whereas statewide in Minnesota, it was 4%.
The change in average rent only increased by 1% in Minneapolis, whereas statewide it increased by 14%. And they also saw a significant reduction in homelessness. They saw a 12% reduction, whereas the rest of the state saw a 14% increase. The original ideas as we presented them included adjusting rules to allow houses to be built on smaller lots. There's more specific wording below, but I'm just going to, for the sake of time, stick to the top shorter descriptions that we used, and then we'll get into some of the details as we present the proposed amendments. Idea 2 would be adjusting the rules so multi-unit houses can be built in neighborhoods. Idea 3 was to adjust the rules to allow existing houses to more easily add units or add units by right. And idea 4 was to adjust the rules to either reduce or eliminate parking minimums in our residential zones. So, from our last presentation to you all, we had Planning Commission presentation in May. In June, we had a joint City Commission, Planning Commission presentation. And July, we went to the Neighborhood Associations of Muskegon, presented to all of the neighborhood residents on this topic. And then we hosted 3 public engagement meetings in July and August. And those were at various sites around the city in the evening, and concurrently hosted an online feedback form via Connect Muskegon, where we received additional input that was more than what we had received in person. And then obviously the fall 2024 Connect Muskegon newsletter that goes out to everybody in the city is starting to arrive at people's doorsteps this month, so people were notified that way as well. So idea 1, and this was the idea to allow for smaller lot sizes. This is a breakdown of both the online feedback we received, the in-person feedback we received in the middle, and then the total results of that feedback on the right side of the screen. Focus on the overall totals. We received about 50% approval, and that is the wrong number, but approval with changes bumped it up higher, over 75%, and then 21% disapproval for that idea. Idea 2, as we presented it, was for allowing multiple family housing in neighborhoods. Again, total 43% were in favor, so a little more hesitancy with this one, but another additional 28% would approve it with some changes in mind. And we ended up incorporating those changes into what we're presenting final amendments today. We heard quite a bit, but we tried to summarize what we heard during those meetings. Idea 1, support was calling for more housing. Everybody knew that that was a need of the city as a whole, and that higher density would help that. Smaller lots would fill vacant spaces that we have and align with some of our historical housing patterns across the city. Concerns that came from that idea involved privacy and crowding issues. Some believed that 30-foot lots would be too narrow. Second idea, which was allowing for multi-unit housing, there was a strong preference for duplexes, but people were generally hesitant to allow for more units, and very hesitant to allow for up to 4 units. The affordable units were a priority for folks, and pairing it with idea 1 would help to mitigate some of those small lot concerns, ensuring that larger numbers of units in a single house would also require a larger lot size. Some of the concerns we had were related to short-term rentals, another very popular topic currently, and as I mentioned, the issue of fourplexes as they related to idea 4, which is the elimination or reduction of parking minimums. And rentals generally brought mixed feelings. Third idea was very much approved by folks, 68% approval as it was written, and another 17% approved with changes. Idea 3, was the possibility of adding additional units to existing buildings. Easier for folks to do. Idea 4 was either eliminating or reducing the minimum parking requirements. Currently, we have that set at 2, and we proposed either reducing it to 1 or eliminating it entirely across the city residential zones. 54% approved of this idea, and another 23% of folks were okay with it with some changes. feedback we received in that regard for adding existing units or adding housing units to existing houses. Many residents saw it as a faster way to address the housing shortage. It didn't involve fully constructing from the ground up a new house, and they appreciated the flexibility of being able to add units to their own houses. We received a number of calls about this leading up to these requests, and it was echoed in the public engagement that we hosted. Some of the concerns were tied to residents purchasing homes specifically to add additional units, and there were thoughts that stricter guidelines could help ensure higher quality developments and higher quality conversions of existing houses. Many residents just generally expressed indifference toward this. They may not benefit themselves, but they could see how it would benefit other residents in Muskegon already. And the final idea was reducing or eliminating parking minimums. We presented this as a both option, obviously eliminating more drastic than just reducing. Some residents favored reducing parking requirements, and that would enable them to provide more flexibility for folks that are looking to add units or build new housing. But there were concerns about winter parking and limited transportation options in terms of mats and what they're able to offer currently. Some preferred a reduction in minimum parking requirements over complete elimination of those. So we went back after hearing all of that. We sort of dove into the comments that we received, and we made some changes. Ideas 1 and 3 we felt were very strongly supported. We are not proposing any changes to the way those were originally presented. But for idea 2, we are hearing resident feedback that 4 units is too high. They felt that there was too many units for what are currently single-family zones in a lot of areas. So we've reduced that down to a total of 3 units you could have in a house in the affected zones. And idea 4 related to parking, we went with a reduction back to 1. That was the number that was in place about 20 years ago. And instead of going all the way down to 0 and not having a minimum. So today, we are presenting, I believe it is 6 different amendments that address all of these ideas. We broke it down sort of by idea here. 2 of them for ideas 1 and 2, and then just 2 changes, 1 each for ideas 3 and 4, and Mike will break those down as we go through redlined versions of the zoning ordinance updates in your packets.
Can I just have a quick question before we do that?
Are you done, Jay? Okay.
Before we move to Mike, the suggested motions, are those reflective of all of the idea changes presented
Yes.
currently? Okay, thank you.
All right. Is there anything else you want to add, Mike?
Not until we get into each case.
Okay.
If there's any questions.
Any other questions for Jamie?
Yeah, what's been
Or
presented.
do you have something else you want to add?
Nope, that was all I had.
Okay. So then let's move on to the first case.
Sure. This is hearing case 2024-27. It's a staff-initiated request to amend section 404 of the zoning ordinance to remove R2 and R3 districts and to adjust the area and bulk requirements for R1 districts. So in 2015, we had our smaller lot initiative where everything in the city that was single-family residential, yes, it. Okay, sorry. Everything that was single-family residential was in R1. However, studying the zoning map, we realized this made dozens, if not hundreds, of lots unbuildable, and we had an initiative to bring this back to how lots were traditionally approved. So we came up with the R2 and R3 districts, but we broke them down into similar block types. So what this would do is really bring that a step further and allow those R3 requirements to be allowed everywhere and just have the R1 standards. So you can see the red line version where we crossed out the chart. There would no longer be a chart. It would be like before 2015 where we just had the standard layout, which you can see on the next page. And we took out the asterisk, but we put them back in their appropriate places. So under this proposal, any residential lot zoned R1 would be able to be considered buildable with at least 3,000 square foot and 30 foot of width for the lot. Buildings could cover 70%. of the lot and 20% of the pavement, which is reflective of the current R3 standards. Other changes include, that's pretty much it actually. The height's not going to change, the build to zone doesn't change, neither does the rear setbacks. There would only be small differences in the side setbacks. R1 is 6 and 8 for a 1 and 2 story. We recommend bringing those down to 5 feet, which are our current standards for R3. That's actually what is in the International Building Code as well, so you can have 10 feet in between developments, and staff think that's adequate for a side setback. We don't believe it adds much for another foot or two. And I believe that would be all of the changes in this one. So, if you have any questions.
Any questions for Mike? All right. Mr. Mayor?
Sorry, it was more of a question for Jamie. I meant to ask when he was doing the presentation. You had all the different feedback in person and online and the total percentage and whatnot. How many people altogether, or break down
total-
between online and in person?
I believe in, let me open this up real quick.
Have to add them up here.
Also
I
in your
couldn't
packet.
find-
So it was
Well,
26.
Was it in our?
26
Well, it
was
says we gotta
online,
add
and
one.
then I
Oh,
believe
it's
we
in
had
sur-
numbers on the first 3 pages of your packet that summarize the in-person feedback. I don't know if we put numbers or if we just have names, so we'd be either counting names, but
40 plus altogether? It was 40. No, it was 40 plus in person. We had about 100 and some online. I remember reading it somewhere and I can't find it now.
I don't think it was
So-
100 online. I think there were 26 full.
Oh, I thought we broke 100 on. We haven't even break 100 online. Oh, okay. Maybe I was thinking combined number that was broke 100 between in person and online.
It looks like there's 38 in person, but then
Okay.
Got 26 participants in the Connect Muskegon page there. One with the logo on the top of the page. It lists just below there 26 participants in the feedback form that we had out there online.
Okay. Thank you.
you good? Okay. Any?
One other thing I'd just like to point out is most of the housing you see being built right now, majority of those are on our R2 and R3 lots. So this really does work for building additional housing, and we're able to split these lots to increase the density throughout the neighborhoods.
If there aren't any more questions for Mike, this is a time for a public hearing. Anybody in the audience that would like to address this issue with the planning commission, please raise your hand and you'll be recognized. Anybody? Now's the time. Yes, sir. Please approach the podium and state your name, and you have 3 minutes to make comments.
My name is Robert Ritter. I live at 1472 Gyrock Street in Muskegon. And my understanding of this is that you want to be able to build houses on, you want to reduce the requirement to the size of the lot. And, that increases, if I remember your statement right, that the house could cover 70% of the lot, correct?
Yeah, that's like that in our R3 zones currently, yes.
Okay.
However, it would be very difficult to do that with setback requirements. It'd be very difficult to approach 70%.
Okay, because my question was, without buildings and the like, on these lots, like if somebody wanted a house put in there and was gonna put a garage behind it, then what? Does that count as part of that 70%?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else who would like to address the planning commission? If not, we'll go to the viewing audience. If you'd like to make comments on this issue, please call 231-724-6721. Nobody, sir? take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
So move. Motion. Did I get a support? Motion and support to close the public hearing. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Motion carried. Now we can consider the subject matter. Commissioner.
Oh, did you want to deliberate or motion?
Motion.
I move that the request to amend section 404 of the zoning ordinance to remove R2 and R3 districts and to adjust the area and bulk requirements for R1 districts be recommended for approval as presented to the city commission.
Second.
I have a motion and support to approve the request as read. Any discussion? Roll call, please. Oh,
I thought
go
maybe we
ahead.
discarded. I'm just going to. I don't know. Some people know we have. I'm going to share that I'm abstaining from all of these items, and specifically with regard to the final notification to our community is the 2024 fall newsletter, which has not arrived in people's mailboxes, and so I would prefer this had not come to us today, but it is, and so I am choosing to abstain from consideration of this. That notification is important to me. When we had done the previous rounds of form-based code, urban residential zoning, the commission was very intentional about noticing all of the affected property owners. They had been noticed. They came here in force to weigh in on such things. The planning commission had made a recommendation with regard to that, which never came to the city commission. And so rather than noticing the entire city, it's not required by law, and it's awfully costly, but we do have a newsletter that's going to the entire city that speaks on this and informs people that this is in progress and how to learn more and engage. And so since that's not arrived in mailboxes yet and folks' homes, I'm not comfortable voting one way or another and moving this forward to the city commission. So I'm just sharing that I'm abstaining.
Okay.
I think I would like to abstain too, because I would not feel comfortable at all, and I don't want to have to waste time in bringing it back to you all before.
Okay. The comments I have about this is, and I guess this goes true for the other items that we'll be considering tonight with respect to the change in zoning requirement or building requirements. I've been a vocal opponent of changing the size requirements to residential building lots. I've been concerned about making them smaller. I've also been concerned about making smaller the square foot requirements for housing, which we're not dealing with at this time. And I've been concerned about the parking requirements, because I've been concerned that we have the potential for shoehorning these houses into lots and creating maybe other problems. Having said that, I'm very pleased with what the city has done with respect to presenting these items to the public and getting feedback, and then with that feedback making some adjustments. I'm not real excited about I wasn't excited about the number of units that were going to be allowed, particularly the threeplexes and fourplexes or quads, whatever you want. But that's been reduced. The 4 units have been removed, and so I think that's a good step in the right direction. I'm also concerned about the parking, and that's been adjusted. Instead of no requirements or eliminating any requirements, there's requirements for 1 unit. So because those changes have been made, and because the city, I think, has done a very good job reaching out to the community to discuss these issues and getting feedback and making adjustments, I'm going to vote in favor of them as a result.
Can I just quickly clarify?
Yeah, you want to say
so,
something?
well, just to clarify, so I'm going to continue to abstain. That's because I didn't necessarily want to vote no.
Then you can't talk about
I'm not necessarily opposed. Well, there's a conflict of interest. and recusing myself. I'm not
No,
recusing
no,
and abstaining. I just wanted to clarify that it's not because I oppose any of these items. There certainly I may wish to have some refinement, but I do not oppose them, and I appreciate the work that our planning department has done to advance this and look at this. In fact, 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago, I said, "Hey, let's do duplexes all across the entire city. Let's get it done." So I do support this. I do support the efforts, and I appreciate the public engagement sessions that have happened and the Connect Muskegon project portal page as well. So I just wanted to
Fair enough.
give that.
Can I clarify the same as follow up with Ken? It's not. I had a good conversation with Jake today. I appreciate the plan, and we know my passion for people being in the homes. It's just I don't want to be in a conundrum like we've been in before without public fully knowing what's going on. And secondly, is it any way that what a R1, a R2, a R3 looks like so that a quick, because everybody does not understand this terminology. And even for me, it was trying to condense it to make it just easier. And so if it's like even on the site, a quick look sheet, just like something like these are great, these are beautiful. Thank you all for doing these. Something like that, so our community have an understanding of the difference of each. I'm sorry.
You're okay.
Mike, do you want to address that? I mean, there is a existing chart for the existing R1, R2, R3, but that's going to be eliminated, as Mike said.
Yeah, there was no chart before we amended it, so it'll look exactly like it looks on
Like
the
it
following
looks like
page.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And then Leah wanted to.
Sure, and I just wanted to, first of all, commend city staff. You've been working on this proposed changes for a very long time, and as she mentioned here to my left, that we were given this example of the engagement that's taken place, and essentially the ideas that were requested and has been applied. And I think that the city over the last few years has made a very solid effort in outreach and making sure that people know what their availability of participation is. And so whether it's online or in person, I think as a city that we have tried very hard to do that. And it's great that we now have also a newsletter as an additional way. But legally, we have certainly noticed people that these changes were being presented. And I just think it's important for us to take action at this point to move these ideas forward, because I think that they are good ideas. But I mostly just wanted to commend staff for doing a very good job, I think, at public engagement and doing their very best to get the word out.
I agree. Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. There's no doubt that even prior to 2015, the city has been doing yeoman's work. City staff, commission members present and prior to get the word out. I'm not sure that waiting for a newsletter to go out is going to move the needle one way or the other. We have been out to the neighborhoods over the past 9 years. We have really promoted our outreach this past year, engaging people in different venues, including here at City Hall, which I participated in as well. This topic is known and has been discussed at great lengths with particular neighborhoods over periods of several years, not without a lot of pushback, but with a lot of dogged respect on the part of staff and commission members trying to explain these issues. Of course, I'm going to support what we have before us, because this is not just a culmination of a little bit of work that's been done in 18 months. This is a culmination of work that, stems back prior to 2015, when we were developing form-based code, neighborhood contact zones, and really making a splash nationwide in being proactive, in being able to really set a standard for urban redevelopment and urban renewal. I mean, when you have cities like Minneapolis and Arlington County, Virginia, Alexandria, Virginia, Sacramento, Austin, Charlotte, Portland, Gainesville, Walla Walla, Washington, including, particular states, really taking this initiative and moving forward with no longer requiring that we have to do things like we did after World War II and make everything R1, which really was culmination of blacklisting and redlining. We have an opportunity here to deal with our reality, and our reality is throughout this, city of Muskegon, we have 30-foot lots, and they were all illegal up until we moved them into the legal column in the Nelson neighborhood, some years back with our neighborhood contact zones. And there's a deep appreciation on how this can be economic and social equity development if we move forward with this. If we belabor it any longer, we could be here 7 years again. And staff has listened. The adjustments, I think, are reasonable. And with our lack of housing stock, it doesn't mean that this is, the magic bullet, but this will give us the opportunity, that we need. These reforms have the potential to bring transformative benefits to the city. And we've seen that in municipalities that have adopted like policies throughout the United States. It's crucial to recognize our housing crisis for what it is. It's a crisis. And our focus must be on the long-term prosperity and stability of Muskegon. And I think we've been really clear on that, and we have made that outreach, and we have engaged the community. These proposed reforms at their core would help remove barriers to building more housing. And I think that's what we have to be focused on right now, because we are in a position, and so is the City Commission, to make those decisions for the betterment of the community. And we got to do it now. I really feel that in my gut. Especially been in the forefront of this with my peers going back into the early 2000s. Increased housing availability without the need for new land development is a gift if we do this, because we can make use of our existing empty lots, our existing infrastructure. Moreover, the potential for smaller homes or our multi-unit developments can significantly increase the taxable value, per acre in the city. And is it just about the money? Well, when you're running a city, yeah, it is. With more units on the same amount of land, overall property values per acres as they rise allows the city to find the resources they need without expanding infrastructure or services, making this financially efficient. These reforms would ease the overall burden of infrastructure and service costs to the Muskegon residents by distributing it amongst a larger population base. As more residents contribute to the same geographic footprint, public services can be used and paid for more efficiently, and that's a big win for our community. And again, the social benefits of the reforms are equally important, creating more affordable housing options. Look at the examples that Jamie gave, and these are real world. Reductions in rental in certain areas, reduction in homelessness. That meets the diverse needs of young families, professionals, seniors who might otherwise be priced out. It can also strengthen community ties by allowing families to stay together and integrating new residents to establish neighborhoods, fostering interactions amongst neighbors, making a real community. These are just, a few points, and I have many more. But I think it's essential that we move forward with a full recommendation to the commission that, you know, the time is to strike now. We have to join our progressive peers throughout the United States that are moving forward on this and begin reaping, you know, potential benefits for the sake of our neighbors.
Speaking of moving forward, um, is there any other discussion? And no, I won't say it. I won't
Jake
say it.
wanted to say something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, any other discussion by the commission?
I do have a comment.
Yeah.
And that comment is just simple. If there's 8 ways to market and we did 7 of them, I think we've done our just due. We've done due diligence.
I think we'll, you know, I don't know that we need to debate that issue. I think we'll know by the vote in a few minutes whether we think that it's time to move this item forward. But so there isn't any more discussion. I'm going to deviate a little bit and let Jake address the planning commission regarding this as well.
Good evening. Thank you for the brief interjection. So I think perhaps maybe I owe a point of clarity and maybe an apology. So one of the things that we should have put in the presentation, we had put in previous potential timelines for how this would move, and we presented those to the public. Because of the fact that the newsletter will be coming out in late October, and also because of the gravity of these changes, typically our practice would be to bring this, assuming it was recommended or not, to the next commission meeting. Our goal would be to bring this in November at the November 12th meeting, which would then allow the notice in the newsletters.
You're talking about the city commission?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And so that would allow the notice in the newsletters to get to people's homes, and then a full 2 weeks, roughly. I think it should be hitting mailboxes in the last week of October. So we had contemplated that, and perhaps I should have made sure that was in the presentation. So we were trying to be very attentive to the details of the actual public engagement, and then neglected to put that in there. Obviously not wanting people to not know that before we go into these motions. So
But
just
to the
wanted to
mayor's
clarify
point,
that.
it didn't, that is not happening before the planning
The
commission
planning.
was taken.
But it's a relief to hear that we're not going to be bringing it to the city commission until November 12th. So that does give time for everyone to receive that. So I will not have the same position at the city commission of abstaining, but given the timeline here, I am abstaining at the planning.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Just wanted to make that point of
Thank
clarity.
you for that.
And-
clarification.
City manager?
Yeah, and I wanted to, I gave Jake the wrong week. I just texted with the development, or community engagement manager. They're at the mail house now. The latest they would be in people's mailboxes would be the beginning of the last week. So hopefully they'll be in people's mailboxes next week. So even additional time on top of that. But
Is that the same timeline as the electronic?
electronics every month, and this one's just twice a year. So, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
this
it's
is
not
the print
oh,
one.
okay.
This
All
is
right,
the
I'm
print
sorry.
one. Yeah, no, you're
I'm
good.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why this one goes to every.
Yeah,
single
if you're on the
'Cause
email
we just
list,
got an email, you know,
yes.
the September one just came out
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago. Okay, I was a little confused. Any other discussion? If not, roll call, please.
Do I still call even if
Yep.
they say abstain?
Yep. Yep.
All right. Commissioner Simmons,
Yes.
Blake, Mazade,
Yes.
Keener,
Abstain.
Seifert,
Yes.
Willette Leroy,
Yes.
Gowron,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Abstain.
Motion passes. Move on to the next public hearing.
This is case 2024-28. Staff initiated a request to amend section 400 of the zoning ordinance to allow duplexes, triplexes, and accessory dwelling units as principal uses permitted in the single-family residential districts. Currently, you're only allowed single-family homes in these districts. The proposed amendments are written in front of you. We would allow duplexes, but there would be a condition that you'd have to have at least 40 foot of road frontage. Triplexes, you would have to have at least 50 foot of road frontage. It also must be serviced by an alley, and the parking must be set back 40 feet from the front and may not be accessed from the front street. So you would actually have to have an active alley behind you in order to have the triplex. Accessory dwelling units would be allowed as long as they were secondary to any of those other 3 building types, single-family duplexes or triplexes. They would need to be in the back. They must be detached, and so those would be the 2 requirements.
Any questions for Mike? Okay. If not, this is a time for public hearing. Anybody that would like to address this issue, please raise your hand. Will be recognized. Yes, sir. Please come to the podium and you have, state your name, please, and then you have 3 minutes.
All right, my name is Randy Vanderwhite, and yeah, I was at some of the public engagement sessions, and I am in favor of duplexes, but am not in favor of anything larger than that. And just pointing to the feedback that was received, it said with idea 2, under support, there was strong preference for duplexes, hesitant to allow more units. So it seems like I'm not alone in that. So I would encourage this one to be voted down. And I also am not in favor of accessory dwellings.
I'm sorry, you're not what?
In favor of accessory dwellings.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else would like to address the planning commission? Now we'll go to the viewing audience. If you'd like to address this planning commission, please call 231-724-6721. Nothing? Okay, then I would take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Support?
Motion and support to close the public hearing. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carried. Now we'll consider the subject matter.
I move that the request to amend section 400 of the zoning ordinance to allow duplexes, triplexes, and accessory dwelling units as principal uses permitted in the single-family residential districts be recommended for approval as presented to the city commission.
Second?
It's a motion and support to approve the requested amendment. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioners Johnson,
Abstain.
Gowron,
Yes.
Willett Leroy,
Yes.
Seifert,
Yes.
Keener,
Abstain.
Mazade,
Yes.
Blake,
Yes.
and Simmons.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Motion passes. Next item, Mike.
Case 2024-29, staff initiated request to amend Article 2 of the zoning ordinance to create a definition for accessory dwelling units. So now that we have recommended approval, we should recommend approval of a definition. You can see it's written before you, and it's the same definition as we use in our form-based code.
Any questions for Mike? If not, this is the time for a public hearing. Anybody in the audience would like to address the planning commission, please raise your hand. You'll be recognized. If not, we'll go to the viewing audience. If you'd like to address this issue with the planning commission, please call 231-724-6721. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Support. Support to close the public hearing. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carried. Anybody?
Put it back on the screen because I just want to make sure I'm on the
I
right
got
page.
it. I move that the request to amend Article 2 of the zoning ordinance to create a definition for accessory dwelling units be recommended for approval as presented to the city commission.
Support.
A motion support to approve the request or the motion to amend the zoning ordinance to create a definition for accessory dwelling unit. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Simmons,
Yes.
Blake,
Yes.
Mazade,
Yes.
Keener,
Abstain.
Seifert,
Yes.
Willett Leroy,
Yes.
Gowron,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Abstain.
Motion carries.
Case 2024-30, staff initiated request to amend Article 4 of the zoning ordinance to remove R2 and R3 districts and rename single-family residential districts. So now that we've recommended in favor of more housing choice, wouldn't make a lot of sense to have it called single-family residential. So we're recommending renaming Article 4 single-family residential to neighborhood residential, and we've changed the preamble to match how our form-based code talks about our urban residential context areas.
Any questions for Mike? Not, this is a time for a public hearing. Anybody in the audience that would like to address this issue with the planning commission, please raise your hand and be recognized. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Randy Vanderwait. I did not speak earlier on the C, and that is because I am in favor of that. However, I do want to reiterate what I've heard from some of the commissioners, that I do feel, yes, there have been improvements on communication with the public, but I'm grateful that there are some who are choosing to abstain today, because personally I was shocked that it was only on Monday that notification of this meeting, that these were going to be on the agenda, came out. As I mentioned that to some people, they were like, why? I'm not surprised. That's the way the city is. There have been initiatives such as the Mayor's Institute of City Design, which says there should be a phased approach as we go about rezoning here in the city of Muskegon. And steps 1 and 2 talked about really engaging the neighborhoods, celebrating the local neighborhoods. Steps 1 and 2, or phases 1 and 2 have been jumped over. And I think there have been a large number of residents who have come out and spoken on this issue. And for there not to be more notification, I think is a problematic. And I do think, even hearing from some people at some of these community engagements, that there was not as much listening as there was of trying to convince. And that's not what a public gathering is supposed to be about. So my encouragement is that there continues to be improvement on engaging and how we engage the community. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to address this issue? If not, we'll go to the viewing public. If you'd like to address this issue with the planning commission, please call 231-724-6721. If not, anybody? Okay, so I'll consider a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Support.
A motion and support to close the public hearing. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
I move.
Go ahead. No.
I move that the request to amend Article 4 of the zoning ordinance to remove R2 and R3 districts and rename single-family residential districts be recommended for approval as presented to the City Commission.
Support. A motion and support to approve the renaming of the Article 4. Any discussion? Mike, maybe I'm missing something here. Up above it says we're calling it neighborhood residential, and then down below, are we renaming it to? Doesn't say.
Yeah, that's a typo.
What am I missing?
It's missing neighborhood.
It doesn't say neighborhood residential.
Yeah, R4, then we crossed out single.
But the motion.
Oh, the motion? Oh, I may have.
I mean, maybe it's just semantics, but
What he's saying is suggesting.
well,
that
the
it
motion
say-
doesn't
yeah.
say to rename it to
neighborhood residential.
neighborhood
Yeah, I would just add
residential.
that in there.
Should that be in there? Or doesn't
Yeah, you
matter?
can add that in there.
You want neighborhood before or after single family, or
rename the single-family residential districts to neighborhood residential.
Oh, this, what we're renaming it to, got it,
Yeah.
okay. And we're renaming it to neighborhood residential is the correct?
Yeah, are you okay with that?
Yeah, yeah.
And then I don't know who seconded.
I did,
it.
that, yep, that's good.
Yeah. Okay, so we're good with the motion. Any discussion on that motion? Further discussion? Not roll call, please.
Commissioners Johnson,
Abstain.
Malron,
Yes.
Willett Leroy,
Yes.
Seifert,
Yes.
Keener,
Abstain.
Mazade,
Yes.
Blake,
Yes.
and Simmons.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Final case, case 2024-31. This is a staff-initiated request to amend section 2326 of the zoning ordinance to reduce the minimum number of parking spaces for single-family and multifamily dwelling units. Prior to 2002, we only had required one parking space. Staff is proposing to change that back to one. We initially were going to propose 0 as we require in our form-based code. After the public input, we took that into consideration and changed that to 1.
Any questions for Mike? If not, this is a time for a public hearing. Anyone that'd like to address this issue with the planning commission, please raise your hand and be recognized. Yes, sir. No, please state your name again for the record.
My name is Bob Ritter.
Thank you.
My understanding of this is you're reducing that to one parking space. Now, if you're gonna put multiple unit dwellings on some of these sites, does that mean one parking space
It's one parking space
per
per
unit?
dwelling unit.
Okay. Because basically, I don't know too many people that own only one car anymore. And in my neighborhood, it's difficult enough in the wintertime when you have multiple cars out there and they're trying to plow the streets and it just turns into a nightmare. You add more dwelling units in there, multiples, and it's gonna get worse. It's not gonna get better.
This is a minimum requirement. It would not preclude people from having more than one parking space.
My take on that is in most cases, a developer comes in and does that, he's gonna do whatever's the minimum. So you might wanna reflect on that before you do that, because you could start a congestion thing, especially in the winter months. It makes it difficult to plow the streets, and then you're gonna have a whole lot of angry people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to address the planning commission? Not, we'll go to the viewing public. If you'd like to address this issue with the planning commission, please call 231-724-6721.
I did misspeak. We have one more case after this, so.
Yeah, I see. I didn't want it to end, Mike.
Neither do I.
And I had a quick point of.
Yeah, while we're waiting, because we're,
Can you update all of the recommended throughout all of these? I've been saying them that way, but they all say recommend versus recommended.
What are you asking?
she's asking.
Search the document for the word recommend and change all of them to recommended as relevant for grammar.
The motion. There's a typo that says recommend instead of recommended. She just
Okay.
wants to acknowledge that her motion is saying recommended.
Okay, we don't have anybody in the viewing public, so I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
A motion and support to close the public hearing. Any discussion on that motion? All's in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now I'll entertain a motion on the subject matter.
I move that the request to amend section 2326 of the zoning ordinance to reduce the minimum number of parking spaces for single-family and multifamily dwelling units be recommended for approval as presented to the city commission.
Second?
motion and support to recommend approval of the request. Any discussion on that motion? Motion, or roll call, please.
Let's see, Commissioner Simmons,
Yes.
Blake,
Yes.
Mazade,
Yes.
Keener,
Abstain.
Seifert,
Yes.
Willett Leroy,
Yes.
Gawron,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Abstain.
Motion passes. We have one more case.
This is case 2024-32. Staff initiated a request to amend Article 20 of the zoning ordinance to allow conversion of single-family houses into duplexes and small multiplexes. Now there's, in our form-based code, this doesn't really matter for the rest of the zoning ordinance, but for the form-based code, there are certain design requirements for a single-family, a duplex, and triplexes and quadplexes. Now they're very, very minimal, but technically to be able to convert them, we need to make these small changes so that's even possible. So we can go through these if you would like to show exactly what exactly we're doing here. For the requirements for a duplex building, the entrances to the upper floor units are to be located at the front and or side street and shall be directly accessed from the face of the street. Our recommendation is to add language stating that the existing detached house building may be an additional unit without meeting this requirement. And that's reflected in the following pages throughout the code. B relates to the stoop frontage option for detached houses, allows for entry doors to be uncovered with no canopy or supported by a roof, while duplexes are required that entry doors be covered with a roof supported with columns. And our recommendation is to add uncovered porches as a design option for duplex buildings. And C talks about engaged porches. Frontage options for a duplex requires a minimum of 50% of the building facade projects either beyond the line of the porch columns or flush with the porch columns, while a detached house requires a minimum of 33%. And our recommendation is to reduce these to 50% requirement for duplex buildings to 33%. There are also requirements for small multiplex buildings. The small multiplexes shall have an 18 to 32 inch pilaster or wall surface every 18 to 30 feet long along the building facades and facing streets. The pilasters shall extend vertically from the grade to the cornice expression line. Our recommendation would be to remove this requirement. We see this as more of a design requirement for larger buildings and not really for traditional houses. B, there's a 10-foot minimum ground floor ceiling height, 9 for detached housing types, and we would recommend to reduce this requirement from 10 to 9 for small multiplexes. C, there's different types of entry door treatments are required for small multiplexes and detached houses. Our recommendation is to add uncovered porches as an option for small multiplexes. D, 18-inch minimum stoop height for small multiplexes is higher than the 12-inch minimum for a detached house. Our recommendation is to reduce the minimum stoop height for small multiplex buildings from 18 inches to 12 inches. E, a small multiplex building requires that 10 to 15% of the facade between the adjacent grade and the finished floor line of the second story be windows, but detached house buildings require 40 to 60% windows, and our recommendation is to increase the maximum percentage for small multiplexes from 50% to 60%. F, engaged porch front option for small multiplex requires a minimum of 50% of the building facade projects either beyond the line of the porch column or flush with the porch columns, while a detached house requires a minimum of 33%. Our recommendation is to reduce the 50% requirements for small multiplex buildings to 33%. So these small changes would allow the conversion of single families to duplexes or duplexes and single families up to small multiplexes.
That's it. Any questions for Mike?
Just one comment. you know, with these requirements, I think you've addressed some concerns that come up during listening sessions and conversations that, you know, people didn't want to see a return of the bad old days where under the cover of darkness, slumlords moved in and, you know, cobbled up a old Victorian into 23 units, you know, of 100 square feet apiece. But, you know, these are firm requirements that really protect the integrity of the structure itself, the neighborhood in which they're sitting, and I really appreciate the rigor that would have to be followed in order to even consider this type of transformation. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Mike? If not, this is the time for the public hearing. If anybody would like to address the planning commission, please raise your hand and be recognized. If not, we'll go to the viewing audience, and if you'd like to make comment on this issue, please call 231-724-6721. I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to support to close the public hearing. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. I'll take a motion on the subject matter.
Okay. I move to amend Article 20 of the zoning ordinance to allow the conversion of single-family houses into duplexes and small multiplexes as presented.
Motion, do I have support?
Support.
Support. Motion support to make the proposed amendments as requested. Any discussion on that motion? Roll call, please.
Commissioners Johnson,
Abstain.
Gowron,
Yes.
Willette Leroy,
Yes.
Seifert,
Yes.
Keener,
Abstain.
Azade,
Yes.
Blake,
Yes.
and Simmons.
Yes.
Motion passes. Mike, anything else for us?
The cat cafes ordinance was passed.
Pardon me? What?
We can now have cat
First reading.
cafes.
First reading.
First reading.
No, that was the second
That was the
reading.
second reading.
Oh, that was the second reading.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah,
And now
sorry.
you
Cat
special
cafes.
land use permit
Yeah,
to do
It was
cat
a long
cafes.
meeting.
Oh.
I got 2 Fosters that need to be rehomed.
Right.
You know, Ken, you got a nice house.
So is there any new business?
Could I just,
Sure, just a
after
minute.
that?
Oh, well,
Is
there's
there
also the short-term rental ordinance, which was discussed on Tuesday.
Okay.
And that was recommended for approval, correct?
wasn't there a change to that? Was there an adjustment or no?
Well,
Yes.
Yes, so the change, the planning commission recommended to take out the transferability. It was ultimately recommended to make a one-time
One-time
transfer.
transfer.
Yes.
Okay.
And that
And then
will
a
need a
sunset
second
clause.
reading now.
Was that kind of a? I mean, you don't have to tell me the vote. Was that kind of a unanimous or across the board?
I think it's
by
5-2, I think.
It was 5-2.
On that amendment to add the one-time transferability. And the 2 that were against it would have preferred transferability in perpetuity, perpetual transferability.
Well, that's. I mean, that seems like a
I
reasonable
think that's how it
compromise.
broke down. I might be mistaken in my recollection, but I think that's how
It's
it
a
broke
good
down.
compromise.
Well, I was going to add on the STR piece
Yep,
that
go
we
ahead.
also did added a caveat or a clause with regard to sunsetting. So any existing exemptions that were issued during the moratorium would sunset, by the end of next year. So if they've not exercised their exemption to do a short-term rental, they would not have that option after December 31st, 2025. They want those exemptions just hanging out there forever.
Okay, so they have a year and a month or so. to- Okay.
Interesting.
All right, Commissioner Gall.
Just as general interest to commission members here, the general public, staff, city commission, tomorrow at 3 o'clock, the Community Foundation of Muskegon County is hosting their annual gathering. The guest speaker for tomorrow is Chuck Marone of Strong Towns, one of the foremost urbanists in the United States at this time. If you all recall, in 2018, Muskegon won the Strongest Towns Award, not least because of our activation of Western Avenue with our chalets, but because of our form-based code neighborhood context efforts throughout Nelson and the turn back of Webster and Muskegon, doing so much right to turn back so many 1950s wrongs. It's free to the public. It'd be a great opportunity. I'm sure that Chuck will be speaking about escaping the housing trap, and where we don't have a lot of say-so right now when it comes to our broken financial system, which is really screwing it up for people finding housing. Big proponent of what we're working on right here. This is what we can do locally to turn the tide on the housing shortage, on affordability, availability at all different price points. So if it'd be well worth even annual leave tomorrow to hear the presentation, and that's all I got.
Mike, is there any old business?
No.
All right. Any other business? Yes.
Couple quick questions. One, in the emails that we received regarding Harbortown, there was basically a complaint that somebody was not responded to. So just curious if we ever connected with the woman who claims she was not reached.
Yes, she was emailed.
Okay. And then I'm wondering two things. One, when folks submit their plans for anything that's expected to be built, like a built building, do we have a requirement that they submit an elevation?
Not always.
It's a requirement of the building plan, right? I mean, the building department would require that.
An elevation? Potentially, yeah. We often do require them to submit them. I was under the impression these were the existing housing types, but it appears that they were not.
Just checking, so it's something if I'm looking for. I think it really helps people to understand what it is that we're approving and where it's going, what it looks like. And then, do we, in our general planning process, have a concept of looking for a space for commuter parking or something to that nature for Pierre Marquette? Have we been talking about that? Because a lot of these developments that are coming up are basically referring to the fact that we're increasing the tourist direction down that way, and I'm just curious if we've made any efforts as the city to kind of look at adjacent spaces where people could potentially park and shuttle or park and ride their bike or anything like that towards the beach.
I'll take that one. We have had some initial discussions about a shuttle service or a tram service between Harbortown Beach parking lot and Pierre Marquette. And we've also had some discussions about shuttles from downtown. The costs of that are we're trying to get information on what that would cost.
Okay, but nothing so far as from like maybe Lakeside.
No. Oh yeah, I guess we did discuss the Guzzi's lot. Yeah. So okay. Yes. So we did. Yeah.
Let's throw that out there.
Yeah.
It seems like a thing that would solve a lot of chaos.
Did you get all your items?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. For now?
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Mayor.
Just very quickly, we heard at the beginning or towards the beginning of this meeting with regard to the situation that happened with Harbortown's PUD, where something was required decades ago but didn't come to fruition. That dynamic has occurred elsewhere, or people have concerns about that dynamic occurring elsewhere with PUDs, where we have something that's in there, it's supposed to be happening, and they have concerns whether it does happen at all or how quickly it happens and whatnot. And I just want us to be cognizant of that, and perhaps staff can bring something forward to the planning commission in terms of how can we better protect or prevent such things, and if that maybe is establishing escrow for you put money into escrow that's going to build the sidewalk or build this trail or do this, then the other public amenity and the like. Just want us to see if we can come up with solutions so that when we establish PUDs and we say these are supposed to be in the PUDs, they actually get done, and not just like, oh, this is a nice thing, and get us over the hurdle, and then the nice thing doesn't necessarily happen. So,
I agree with that. But I would say that, and I agree with you that that's not just Harbortown development, that there's been others. And I think what happens sometimes is developments take some time. And Harbortown's probably a good example because it took more than 10 years to develop. And there, we can talk about why the sidewalks went in or didn't, but that's happened in other places as well. And I think a lot of times these developments are fluid and things change, and so that's what happens sometimes. And perhaps there are some measures that can be taken, such as a bond or putting money up front. But by doing so, there's a downside to that too. Sometimes is that takes away capital for the development, and it could throw some cold water on developers. So, anyways, I think that it's important to look at those things, but also I think we need to consider what the downside might be for those requirements. Anything else from the Planning Commission? Is it time for public comment? Anybody from the public would like to address the Planning Commission? Not? Then we'll go to the viewing audience. If anybody in the viewing audience would like to address the Planning Commission on a matter not on the Planning Commission agenda, the number is area code 231-724-6721. If not, if there is anything else to come before the commission by the planning commissioners, we stand adjourned.
Oh.
Go Tigers.
Oh. Just kidding.
Too late. We're adjourned.
Jinman Tire, Judge Pittman, and R2 Designs. Thank you for your support of Muskegon Big Red Football. Keyshawn Drummer in the backfield. Lawrence down at the bottom of your screen. Young takes the